Quinn, can you hear me?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes. Okay.
Good, thank you.
Somebody to help me with my laptop. It's not like a computer. Mine's got, instead of light, mine's dark. Well, should we start without Dave? Michelle, Lisa, we ready? Good evening, everyone. We would like to welcome you out to South Weaver City Council. Today is May the 8th at 6 o'clock, and we'll begin this meeting with a pledge of allegiance from Councilman Halverson, and then I'll offer a prayer.
Please stand and repeat after me. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our Heavenly Father, as we gather City Council of South Weaver City, we're thankful for this opportunity to be together this evening and pray that we might be guided in the discussions that we have this night. That we might be able to make the proper decisions that will benefit South Weaver. We're thankful for this opportunity. We're thankful for our freedoms that we enjoy. We're thankful for this country that we live in that offers the freedoms that we have, and pray that God will bless it, that we will always be free. We pray that we might be able to discuss those things this night, that we might be able to make the changes and make the necessary decisions that will benefit this city. We pray, Heavenly Father, for those people in Ukraine and around the world that are suffering, and pray that God will bless them and help them in their hour of need. We pray for thy Spirit to be with us now, and this we pray for in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. Want to mention that Twin is joining us tonight on Zoom. We'll begin with our public comments. Please be respectful of the guidelines. Individuals may speak for 3 minutes or less. Do not remark from the audience. State your name, address, and direct your comments to the entire council, and council will not respond. So we'll open it up for public hearing at this time, for public comments, sorry.
Good evening, Bill Ludo, 742 Shea Lane, the hated HOA that Weaver hates. So, wow, that fell on deaf ears, man. Yeah, right. So I only have 3 minutes, so I can't break down all your facts. Of course, I'm here for those on social media that know who I am, for the dust. I'm retired Army. It's near and dear to my heart. I came here to retire, lived a quiet life. But I've been exposed to chemicals. I've been exposed to toxics throughout my 25 years. Burn pits, Kuwait oil fires, you name it. I've been there, I've done it. So the dust gets a little sensitive with me because I've been in the environment for a long time. I'm a combat arms guy, I'm infantry, so I've been in every fight since Panama. So I've been around. So I'm not here to quote all the regs and the things, and I don't really care who faltered back in the past on letting these cats dig 5 acres out, not follow up, not held them accountable. That's in the past. There's nothing we can do about it. What I'm here to present tonight is the fact that need the city council and Mr. Mayor to hold them accountable now. I've seen comments from people that have called rude answers, rude people, not there, just going off of what they say, but I'll take them at face value. So I know we're going to get a presentation about the dust monitoring. Well, my dust monitoring is the fact of ledges filled with dust, digging out gutters every year, sweeping up in a couple weeks time about 3-gallon pail of dust in my front yard, watching my yard since I've been here 2014 grow 5 inches. So that's my monitoring, to include my health. Because I know since I've come here, it wasn't that bad in the beginning, but I'd have to say in the last several years, it's really gotten bad. And I understand everybody's gonna say, we're in a drought, dude. We're in a drought. Well, they have things they're supposed to do. They need to be held accountable. I don't care if we're in the Sahara. It's just, they need to be held accountable. So I understand you got the Hill, you got developers that are politicians that lean towards, they're protected, yada, yada, yada. But in my personal opinion, humble opinion, is the city council and Mr. Mayor, you guys are here to protect this community. The east side of Weaver is a dust trap. So it's gotten to the point for me that I'm passively pursuing looking at pop and smoke because it's just killing my lungs. It's killing me. And granted, I'm just one voice, and I know it sounds like a bit of a pity party. You can take it out of me later. I got thick skin. But if I'm suffering, I know there's all kinds of other people suffering. And I see the folks on social media that comment and say the same thing. So with that, that's all I got. I just hope you take it in consideration. And I hope as we move forward, you guys hold them accountable and get strong armed with them. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for your service.
Paul Sturm, 2527 Deer Run Drive. My public comments tonight are regarding the closure of 2700 East on the 25th of February. I'm doing this because neighbors and everybody else came to me and asked if I would say something. I must say I'm very disappointed with the way South Weber City handled the closure of 2700 East on 25 Feb 22. I have some significant timelines. Trevor notified South Weber City Council on about 8 Feb that construction was starting on the lofts. Construction started the next day with flattening the site and also digging the trench for the stormwater protection plan plastic barrier adjacent to the canal, where they encountered large stone blocks. This is important because the developer knew about these rocks 3 weeks before the closure. 2, it should be noted that the boring machine was on site at the lofts approximately 21 Feb, if not before. I believe this was used as a premise for the rapid no-notice closure of 2700 East. I must state the following: poor planning on their part does not necessitate an emergency on ours. I recommend the city be more proactive with developers and trust but verify when a developer makes such a claim of urgency and not be pressured. 3, from the actions that I can track, I believe there appears to be some disregard for the impacts on approximately 800 plus citizens on the eastern end of South Weber regarding this closure. It appears that the original permit issued by the city also did not take the timing of the morning traffic into consideration. The original closure was occurred 0800, but 0900 was finally agreed upon after citizen uproar on 22 Feb 22 by residents north of the canal when they received their closure notice. There's also the issue of timeliness of providing notifications to other impacted residents. Will the developer be held accountable for the lack of prescribed notification? 4, I was first notified by a neighbor at 9:36 on 25 Feb about the closure, then saw the flyer on my door, plus received calls from neighbors. This was 1/2 hour after the closure started. After some fact finding, I called the Davis County Sheriff's Office at 10:37 to notify them of the closure. At 10:48, I called the Davis School District and talked with transportation and was told they had not been notified. And they appreciated the call so that they could notify bus drivers of route changes with the kindergarten routes about to start. South Weber Elementary had nothing to do with the Davis School District buses. It was just the headquarters. 5, residents did not receive official notification from the city until 11:03 on 25 Feb 22, 2 hours after the closure. I recommend that a notification procedure be developed by South Weber City to prevent this from happening in the future. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. Thank you, Paul. Thank you for having me tonight. I live in South Weber. My name is Jewel Fausto. I live at 2068 View Drive. I'm going to read a letter that I'm getting ready to submit addressing the dust nuisance concerns. As many of you know, and my neighbors, we feel this in an intimate way. It's more than a nuisance. It's a real concern for myself, my neighbors, and for the residents here in South Weber, especially those that live near the gravel pit. I moved here in 2001, and since then I've witnessed personally that the gravel pit has continued to grow. I understand that. I understand that they were here before us. However, it's impairing our ability to have a healthy and good life here in South Weber for those that live near the gravel pit. It's a large gravel mining operation that I understand is now moving forward to processing materials. I'm a retired inspector with State of Utah Department of Environmental Quality, Division of Waste Management and Radiation Control. Because of my concerns, I attended the OPACTETK visibility study and the Method 9 EPA emission standard. I was qualified to do so. I live here and I see it every day. It's exceeding 40% opacity most times. And I understand we can't control the wind. It is Mother Nature. But my feeling is that the gravel pit is minimizing their efforts. They can do far more, far more. It would be not inconvenient to them and not expensive, but they don't even apply water. And you say, well, it's the drought. They never did it before the drought. I think water is the #1 mitigation effort. I expose it. I see every day those exposed piles of dirt in our yard. They've gotten bigger. They're much bigger. And our hands are tied. I've went to the state of Utah. I've went to MSHA. I've done everything except work with everybody here, all of us together, to try to reach a resolution, something, anything. And we're begging the mayor and the city to do just a little bit more. You know, we're not asking for closure. We're not asking to stop the wind. We're not asking for complete mitigation. We're asking them to adhere to their agreement that they've reached with the city. We're asking them to be involved with the neighbors here that are suffering unduly. I'm passionate about this, but I believe we can make this work, but we've got to start. And I don't really know where to do it on my own. We all feel this way, but we need to do the work. I believe that Parson is conscientious. I think when we've approached them, they've tried. I can see that they've reclaimed one side of the hill. They've done a few things. Maybe we have boxes out collecting dust and analyzing that. All these are efforts in a positive way. I agree with anything and everything that we all do as a community. I think we can take the edge off this. Certainly they were here first. Certainly we have the wind to contend with. Let's work together on this to try to mitigate some of this. I plan on working with the state of Utah. I plan on working with MSHA. Let's do this together or we'll have to move. I see no resolution without the help of everyone. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Joe.
Thank you.
Lynn Paul, 826 East South Weber Drive. I guess I'm here to talk about the sand, the dust. I don't have the answer, but I can tell you it has gone, this gentleman says it's gotten worse the last few years. It has. I built a deck on the back of my house 10, 15 years ago. Until the last 2 years, I could use it. I cleaned it off in the morning. And I could have dinner there with my family at noon. You can't do that anymore. You can clean it off at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, you can clean it off, 10 o'clock, you clean it off. It's there every day. And I don't know, I don't think there's a house in South Weber where the wife, I'm just assuming that the guys don't help clean, okay? Where the wife doesn't complain about the dust coming in around the doors, around the windows. Blair, I apologize to you.
I clean.
Okay. Anyway,
I don't.
I've lived here forever. since the gravel pits were just little tiny holes up there. But it has got worse and somehow we got to do something. I wonder about all the little kids that come down here. You've seen all the kids that come to this elementary? And many days that dust is in the air. It's got to be, it cannot be good for them. Other thing I was just going to mention, has any of the council ever been up on top of this hill right here and seen that all the work that's being done right here on top of above Starks? Have you been up there? If we would really get a rain like we've all been praying for and soak the ground, I'm not sure that whole mountain won't slide down into the valley. Mayor, have you been up there? How many tons of asphalt would you think are up there? Thousands in there.
Quite a bit. It's a pretty big operation.
Big operation, and there's concrete to be ground up. There's thousands and thousands of tons. And when the wind comes from the south, when they're working up there, it fills this whole valley again. So we're not only getting it dirt from this end, we're getting it from the south end too. So it is a problem. And like I said, I don't have any of the answers. Pray for more rain, pray for a lot of snow, whatever we can do that way, but maybe Bo's got the answers because he used to watch my fires when I built fires when I thought supposed to, so I'll let him take it over then. Thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lynn.
Matt Peterson, 1820 East, South Weaver Drive. We haven't lived here as long as you, but we've been here a little while, yeah. So we're concerned with the dust as well. But probably one of my biggest concerns is stormwater. So the gutters get full. And then all the commercials on TV, we all live downstream. So I don't understand how that works, where it goes. And I don't know what Parsons does to help with stormwater, if anything. So not only does it affect our property, which, I mean, we're point blank, so we get hit pretty hard. And in order to go out and get the truck ready, I have to use a leaf blower. It blows the dirt off. So we're concerned with property values being impacted, but then I'm also concerned with how heavy it impacts our stormwater. Because I look at the curb and gutter as I drive up past the school and right next to the pit, and it's full, absolutely full. So I guess that was one question that I posed, and I don't expect anybody to have an answer, but it is a concern. It is a concern for me because we watch it, how it affects us downstream. So that's all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, thank you for your comments. We appreciate it. We want you to know, I will comment on this. Your thoughts and your concerns are not going unheeded. We truly are, as a city council and a mayor, trying to do our best. And we've been in contact with a lot of people, and it truly takes a little bit of time, but we are truly trying our best to mitigate the problems that we have, and we will continue to do so until we do see an improvement. And that's one reason our next item on the agenda, when we came across the information that we had a resident here in South Weaver that worked for the DAQ in Utah, wanted to bring him in and let him shed a little light on this situation. And so at this time, we'd like to, Bo Call, if you'd like to come up and say a few words.
Good evening. I'm Bo Call. I manage the air monitoring section with the Division of Air Quality. I also live in South Weber and have been here for 23 years, long enough for my trees that I planted to grow a little sideways. And so I appreciate the wind. So I, of course, will answer any questions you might have that I could possibly answer, but I thought I would just start with a couple of things. I talked to Councilmember Soderquist the other night, and he asked if I could come and kind of relay what we had talked about. There's a couple of things about particulate in the air, and what I do is I manage the section that monitors that particular pollutant across the state. We monitor for PM10 and PM2.5, and generally what we find is that PM10 is the dust that gets blown around or bigger. PM10 basically means it's 10 microns or smaller in size, and it blows around. And that's the largest regulated size of particle that there is. And that, the standard for that is 150 micrograms over a 24-hour average. And if you exceed that, then you've exceeded the standard. By and large, we don't run in danger of exceeding that standard, except during wildfire smoke events occasionally, sometimes on heavy fireworks events around the 4th of July and 24th of July, if the wind happens to be blowing in the right direction. And when we get those spring storms, dust storms that blow in, usually out of the West Desert. And then we see that we can exceed that standard. The other standard that we deal with is PM2.5, and it is for particles that are 2.5 microns and smaller. And generally speaking, those particles are the ones that have the greatest health impact. They're smaller, they get down in your lungs, they're the ones that cause the most issues. The bigger particles don't get down there so much, up to PM10. And then the stuff that's even bigger than that really is grit. It's PM30, PM40, and things along those lines. The PM2.5 issues that we have in the state are generally here during the winter, and they are when we have an inversion that sets up and are related to the formation of PM2.5 in the atmosphere from pollutants that are emitted. PM2.5 is generally a product of combustion. So if you've got fires burning, some of that smoke that comes off of there that you're going to see is going to be PM2.5. There's a part of it that's also PM10. But the lion's share of particulate that we see during the winter is actually formed in the atmosphere. It's called ammonium nitrate. And it forms in the atmosphere from the tailpipe emissions, the other factory emissions, the emissions from your water heater, what we all do when we start our car, we have our furnace going, all that stuff contributes. It sits in the air, and then it builds ammonium nitrate, and then the levels can get higher. Now, the standard for PM2.5 is 35 micrograms per cubic meter in a 24-hour period. And you just you measure and average that out. And then there's another standard, which is 12.5 micrograms annually. And so that's a standard that we haven't had any problem keeping thus far across the state. But we do suffer from occasionally exceeding the 24-hour standard, which is 35 micrograms. Now, the way the standard works is it's the 98th percentile, which means that we get it's the 98th. If you had 100 of them, you'd take the 98th value, and the top two would be the ones, that's the point where you'd look. And so for all practical purposes in a normal year, we look at the 7th or 8th high sample. And that's the one you compare to the standard to see if you're violating the national ambient air quality standards or not. Over the years that I've been working for the Division of Air Quality, I've just past 29 years. And over the years, we've watched the number of days that we've exceeded the standard go from 30 days a year to 20 days and down to where we're at 6 or 8 days when we have a bad year. Last year, we didn't really have a bad year. This year, we had a little bit worse, but it just all depends. Now, so that's pretty much what PM2.5 and PM10 are. And let me tell you how it relates to gravel pit operations in general. Now, I don't have a study, and there hasn't been a study that I know of really that has done monitoring at our pits per se. The health department did some stuff back in 2017 and 2018, and I plotted that against some other numbers and sent that to Councilman Soderquist. Did you all get that? Did he pass it? Did that get passed around? So I just wanted to kind of show you where you compared. And in that chart, well, there's two things about that chart. One, our dust problem generally in the state, not from blown dust from a gravel pit, is normally during the winter. So we wouldn't consider September or October timeframe really to be the best time to do it. But we're looking for that time of year for PM 2.5 to be high single digits, low teens. And that's pretty much where the numbers fall for PM 2.5. The kind of dust that comes off of a gravel pit operation is really something on the order of PM 40. It's really grit. It's too big to be considered PM 10. It's way too big to be considered PM 2.5. Those are the standards that we look at. And so that's one of the reasons that there's an issue, is because it's not the size of the particle that comes off gravel pits normally that are the issues from an air quality standpoint. All pits operate with a permit, and that permit requires that they take certain actions. All those permits are available online. I know there was some talk about putting a grammar request in to get those permits, along with all the inspection reports from the inspectors that go and inspect those. You don't have to really do a grammar request. They're all available online. You can just go to the DAQ webpage and hunt for them and find them. And if you need some help finding them, then we can help you get to the ones that you want. You can look at them and see what the requirements are and what the pit is required to do, or what any source for that matter is required to do if they have an approval order or an operating permit. Within those documents, you'll find what they're allowed to do, what their limits are on the permits. On the inspection memos, you should find how much they're using of their limit. Sources are limited by a number of things, whether it's throughput tonnage, number of hours of operation, any number of things. And it's generally specific to a particular type of operation, how it turns out. So that's pretty much what how that works. Now, as far as the dust control goes, generally speaking, all these sorts of operations have requirements that they must follow to try and mitigate dust. Those requirements vary from site to site, but generally involve spraying water around and how their operations are supposed to be done. Uniformly, though, it's kind of given that if your wind is blowing faster than about 25 miles an hour, there's not a whole lot you can do about it. So there are exemptions or exceptions in place for when the wind gets over a certain speed, and you can see what's in those permits that and what they have to do, and when that effort either can be curtailed or when they're not expected to be able to be successful because it's, well, spraying water in the wind. We all know how that works. And so that's where you can look and see if they're following their permit requirements. I talked to the compliance folks that actually go out and do the inspections before I came down here. And what I got was that on their last inspections that they look to be following their permit requirements. And so from that aspect, there's not a whole lot that we can do at the state level to cite them to do any more than they're already doing, because that's what their permit conditions are for. That is their law is to do that, at least at the state level. The permits, when they're put together and written, are based on all the other federal and state laws that we have, and basically have to meet all those laws and all those requirements. And so it's not something that we just arbitrarily say you can't have any dust. There's a certain standard that they have to have and processes that are in place. And that's pretty much the way the permits are written. And so that's the way they are. Yeah, maybe I'll pause there and see if you have any questions.
Anyone?
Oh, yeah.
Length of term from the permit.
They're pretty much permanent. The way an approval order works, unless they've changed them, is that you have an approval order, you're approved to operate until you do something to change those conditions. If a source wants to say, for example, you've got a pit that's got one crusher going and they want to add a second crusher, then they look and see whether that is something that requires a new approval order. If it is, then they have to open up the approval order and go in and then approve that. And at that time, they could impose new conditions. I'll give you an example about this. I used to do inspections at Geneva Steel and on the coke oven battery. The coke oven battery had not been updated in decades. It was still using an approval order that was way, way old, and they had never got around to updating anything. And I don't know that they could have updated it because the coke oven battery was so old, they may not have been able to put any additional controls on. So there was a lot of black smoke being belched out of there, but we did method 9 and we were looking for that 40% opacity, and generally speaking, they passed. If it was a brand new facility being built or they updated it, then that might have been like 5% opacity or 10% or something, and there'd have been a lot stricter controls. But that's typically the way it works. If there's some additional rules for operating permits, they have to be renewed every so often. But that's a little bit different animal. I don't think that you want to get into into those weeds tonight.
Okay. A couple of quick questions. Number one, thank you so much for coming out. I mean, honestly, I know this is something that has been a huge issue for everyone on the council and including everyone in the city, really. So thanks for coming out. And I recognize that this is not your fault. So I know a lot of the questions you may be able to give us some information on, and I'm not expecting to, have a fix out of it. But I guess the biggest problem that I have is that when I was looking at particle size, you guys measure 10 and 0.25 or 2.5, sorry. When PM4 is actually the size that OSHA has already determined and has since early 1900s, that this is the size that actually causes real damage to the lungs. The American Lung Association, and it's actually called silicosis, is a type of pulmonary fibrosis, a lung disease caused by breathing in tiny bits of silica, so just the sand particles, a common mineral found in sand, quartz, and many other types. Silicosis mainly affects workers exposed to silica dust at the job in construction mining. Over time, these particles scar the lungs, which causes the whole list of every type of lung disease that's possible. And I feel like the process of air quality standard right now is broken because, like you said, there's nothing you can do, and yet what's happening over here. And I'm wondering, when you said that it takes, kind of a combination of everything that's happening on the federal level and looking at what that OSHA standard has, and I mean, they keep on passing even stricter requirements of it for face mask, rebreathers, everything, because that causes so much damage. But they only handled the work site.
Right.
I guarantee everything that's leaving the work site is coming into, especially those homes within a half mile to a mile radius, at least for that PM4s. How do we do something about it? Where do we go from here? Because that's the particle size that's really, I wish we would monitor and see, because that's going to tell us when we go hit the health department or we go, try to change the law at the state or whatever we can do, that's the size that has to be monitored, because that's the size that, I mean, I got a list from one of the residents who, I mean, they're talking about everything from their animals that are coughing, wheezing, dying, and all of these kind of lung problems. So yes, PM 2.5 definitely gets down deep, but PM4 is also getting in there and scarring just as well. That, I mean, it's a pretty big deal. Where do we go? Can you, I don't know if that's even a fair question for you.
Well, I'll do my best. One of the things is that you might want to try and see what's in the dust. We do a monitoring called a speciation monitoring, and it is designed to, we take samples and send them off to a lab where they analyze it, and that's how we know that, for example, and I've said that most of our particulate during the winter is ammonium nitrate. We're actually collecting dust on a filter, sending it off to the lab. They're analyzing it and telling us what is found there. By and large, it's not, I don't know offhand what it is, and I can send you the report if you want, or send you the link where you can find them.
Yeah.
We have a number of sites that collected that sort of data, and we continue to do it so we can see what's out there. The main difference between this PM4 that you're talking about and the ambient stuff is everything is from OSHA is workplace related. It's the idea that you're right there, right over the activity. The first half of my career was doing asbestos inspections. And I know all about wearing respirators and silicosis compared to asbestos type minerals and those types of things. And, that's all about being right there doing it. And the standard really doesn't apply to somebody who is on the outside, out of the work area, who's getting just a casual exposure to that. And it's not to say that they aren't impacted.
Yeah.
I won't say that, I'm not going to stand here and say that you're not impacted because we're not over the standard.
Yeah.
However, I will tell you that I just live down on 475 East. And when I get up in the morning and I go to work, I can't tell if the air is bad until I get to Fruit Heights. The reason that you can see the mountains is because of the wind. The wind blows the pollution out. We don't have monitors at the mouths of canyons because the wind that comes out of the canyons tends to keep them cleaner. And so that's not the place that is the worst. And so we don't generally monitor a whole lot there.
Yeah.
And so that's it. I tell people all the time when they call me and say, where should I move? I'm moving to Utah. I said, well, find a mouth of a canyon and move there. If the trees are a little bit sideways, you've got enough wind, it's going to keep you cleaned out so that it's not this stagnant air that we have that's a problem during the winter when we have these inversions. That's not to say that during the summer when it's hot and dry and we're blowing grit out of the pits and sandblasting all of our stuff, that isn't also an issue. But what we found is that the particulate that we can care about, that we're allowed to care about, PM2.5, that those numbers don't support, they're low enough that they really don't support any more action on our part. Not to say that it isn't a problem.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to be tarred and feathered, but that is what we find.
Yeah. And that's, I guess that's where I'm heading with all of this is that I really think this is going to end up in a health battle versus a pollution. And I know I'm drawing kind of a fuzzy line there, but because of so much damage that can happen, and it's honestly, the pits are only during a certain amount of time that really is happening. But when that happens, it's just so close to what could be a workplace situation only extended over time. And that's the thing is that I haven't seen really looking at the extended time type of research or find anything for it. Like I said, I know your department is looking for something very specific on it.
Yeah.
And I don't know really where either for us or to tell the citizens to go next, but I think that we've got to approach it more as a health issue.
One of the documents that I submitted was what I asked my staff to hunt around to see what they could find, and was a report that was done in Brigham City, adjacent to their mine at the mouth of their canyon that gets a lot of dust, presumably, and blows a lot of dust. And so I would look at that. It's a little dated. It's a few years old, but dust is dust. I don't think anything has changed. They're still digging the ground and it's still making dust and the wind blows. There are other communities that have these same types of issues. You're not alone. I get calls frequently from down in St. George. I can't remember the name of the place, but I think it's some wash, but they have the same type of deal. They've got a nice retirement community there, just building out everywhere. And they've got a pit in the ground that's digging out dirt, and exactly the same conversations. It's a problem, it's a nuisance, and it's PM40. And unfortunately, that doesn't really allow us a whole lot to do because it's not, we can't justify anything. It's not over the PM10 standard or the 2.5 standard.
And your standards and everything are set on the state level legislator, or is it a committee, or is it?
We actually follow the federal standards.
Okay.
Right now, there are, and I will tell you right now that the current administration is reviewing the standards that were, the standards are reviewed every 5 years. And with the change of administrations at the last election, there was an opportunity for the new administration to go back and review some decisions made by the previous administration. And one of the things they're reviewing is the PM 2.5 standard, or the particulate standard. The previous administration said, no, there's no need to change anything. And the current administration is basically saying, whoa, we might need to look at that. So I don't know what they're going to do, because they look at it and there's rumors that come out. So I don't know what they're going to do, and I don't want to, suggest what they might do and start spreading rumors myself.
Yeah.
But it is currently under review, and that's where we get it from. We are required to enforce the federal standards. So we're delegated from EPA to enforce those standards. And by the way, EPA has been getting calls and complaints, and they call us to tell us that we've been getting calls and complaints. And so the message and the voices are being heard, and they're getting there, and they're coming back around and saying, hey, there's these complaints, can you do something about them, or go check them out? So
That's
if
good
you
to
call
know.
Region 8, they know our phone numbers and they call us.
That's good to hear.
Is there a concrete production limitation to this mine over here?
Any source has just about every source has an approval order, and I don't have them all memorized, and I haven't been in compliance for a few years, so I wouldn't want to speculate, but generally speaking, they have an approval order which limits how much their operations can operate. Like I say, every source has its own sort of limitations and their processes. Just to give you an example, when I was inspecting wood furniture manufacturers, I had one company that their limit was how much time on the assembly line, because everything ran on the assembly line. So they had 18 hours a day they could run their assembly line. I had somebody else that said how much natural gas could they use, because their furnaces were natural gas driven. So they had a BTU of natural gas that was their limit. I had another one that their limit was how many gallons of coating they used, because that's really what we cared about. 3 processes, all pretty much the same, all with different limitations, because that was their pinch point and how they could best monitor and how we could go and inspect them to make sure that they were doing what they're supposed to be doing. I'm sure that all these sources out here have permits that have similar type of activities.
Would this be procedural and something that they would agree to adhere to, and then the state might hold them accountable to their own procedures?
Well, the way it works is before somebody can operate, they have to file an NOI, which is a notice of intent to start operations. In that, they say what they're going to do, and then an approval order is created based on what they say they're going to do, that implements all the controls that are required. It's generally a negotiation with the company so that they are doing something that they can do. The controls are put on equipment that they have. They're very specific. An approval order may say that you can have one grizzly, which is everybody know what a grizzly is? It's a big thing that separates dirt. But they may have one by name and number and manufacturer and size and everything else. And so if they change that, that would be a change to their approval order. So all of that is in there. And then that is all used to calculate what their emissions are. And then their emissions are compared against basically the broader area to make sure that that source isn't going to put us out of attainment or cause other significant deterioration of the air.
So I have their permit pulled up. I've just been browsing through it. It's 225,000 tons of concrete and 1.5 million tons of aggregate dust. Aggregate, is that the dust?
Aggregate is just the rock.
Just the raw, that's what they're putting in the
Raw
truck.
sand,
Yeah.
okay.
And that's just for Parsons Pit.
Baker Parsons.
And you have to look at whether that's normally those things run on a rolling 12-month average. And so you have just the way that works, or some sort of rolling average or total for the year. And so the way that works is you just, at the end of the month, you lop off the last month, add the current month, and you can't go over your limit. And the next month you do the same thing. So it allows for, if your production wanes during the winter when nothing's really happening, you can kind of boost up a bit. They might have monthly limits on there, daily limits, any number of things.
So my question is just, sorry, did I just cut someone off? Looking over this and kind of what you're talking about is I feel like this is a little bit of the fox guarding the hen house, and that we're telling them, or you're telling them, hey, these are the permits, this is what you're allowed to do. And they come back and say, yep, we're doing that. is there any random checks to make sure that nothing's changed? Is there any time that you guys come in unannounced to make sure that they're doing exactly as they're supposed to? And is there any sort of enforcement if they're not doing those things? What happens?
Okay. Yes, there are random checks. All of our inspections are unannounced. Inspectors just show up there and say, I'm here to inspect. And the sources are required to keep records of all of this kind of stuff. And so everything in there that's a requirement, there's some way that an inspector can look at that, either through records or observations, method 9. Method 9 is looking at dust, by the way. I know it was mentioned several times here, but it's basically opacity. And I can explain to you what that is if you want to know. But and so when we show up as an inspector at the source, we just show up and say, we're here to do an inspection. Let's go see it. And you go walking around, you look and see what's going on. You look for additional equipment, new stuff, something that's different that shouldn't be there. You're looking at their logs. If they're watering their haul roads and their piles, they have to have logs of that. And so you look at that. And if anytime you find something out of whack, it's either missing or it's not there, they didn't do it, then they could be subject to a violation. And they call those compliance advisories or notices of violation. And the worse they are, the more they cost.
How often do you typically check and do inspections, random inspections? Goodness.
That I can't tell you since I've been out of the inspection side of the house. Some sources are inspected every year. Some are several years in between. Some that get a lot of complaints get inspected a lot more often, especially when they start getting complaints. And we have during the summer, they have random dust patrols that go around and just patrol for dust.
Any before 11 a.m.?
Yes. Yeah, but it is a challenge. When you're looking for dust, you have to consider where the sun is. We have a real problem if you drive down towards Salt Lake, you get to Beck Street and there's that whole hill right there.
Yeah.
Well, you can't actually look at the dust until afternoon because the sun has to be behind you. And to get behind you, you have to be on top of the hill or in the pit looking out. And so it's a challenge. That's another method 9 limitation. Your sun always has to be behind you.
But don't the people in the pit also have the ability to call them shut down, basically, if they notice it over, what, 40% from the inside? I thought that was one of the trainings that they do for the operators.
Each source has its own permit and what they can do. Typically, emissions are what crosses the property line. So you'd have to look at the fence and see what's coming across the fence line.
Okay,
So-
sorry, Haley.
Just to clarify, there are certain unique stipulations in each source, in each permit.
Yes.
So some permits may be a little bit more strict than others, you could say.
They may appear to be more strict. Yes.
Is it possible for certain stipulations in other permits that we see to put into this permit to protect our citizens?
It's possible, and this gets into the realm of stuff that I'm not, you can't hold me to, but generally speaking, the permits are the way they are, and they don't change unless they do something that requires a change. However, when they come to get a new permit, they come and say they want to increase their production or something, that opens up the whole thing to a new gamut of rules and regulations.
What if we wanted to challenge them on the amount that they say that they did versus what their source allows them to do, just out of curiosity? How would you go about that?
So we would look at their records and just see what their records say, and then just add them up and, verify that however they're accounting for the tonnage is accurate. And then we would just look at that. They're also required to report to us on a regular basis some of this information, at least every 3 years on what their emissions are. And for some processes, they have to report every quarter what their emissions are and stuff. And it's not gravel pits, but other sources. So there's a lot of reporting that has to be done, but generally it's on us to find the problems.
Are inspection reports public information?
Yep, they're on the same webpage you found the permit,
Okay, thank you.
and you can find any of them, look them. If you have any question, then there's inspectors, and Jay Morris is in charge of that branch. So I would refer you to him for any questions on those.
Thank you, Bo. We appreciate you coming in. We're way over what we had allotted for this.
Yeah.
Need to move on with our agenda.
Can I just offer one more thing?
Sure.
Please.
I'm happy, I give tours all the time of our air monitoring network and equipment and stuff. And I would be happy to, if you were interested in looking at what our equipment looks like and where our nearest monitoring stations are to South Weaver, be happy to. Just let me know.
We
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
Thank you.
Mayor,
Thanks,
can I
Bob.
ask
Thank you,
one
Bo.
clarifying question?
Yeah, go ahead.
From what it sounded like, the Division of Air Quality is really monitoring 2.5 and 10s, but you made a statement that what comes out of the gravel pit is more along the lines of 40.
Right.
So what is being monitored is kind of the health concern dust, and what we're dealing with more is the nuisance.
That's
dust.
correct. So as a nuisance, then the city has some leeway to enforce their own nuisance regulations. I'm not sure what your powers are, but that's basically what we tell people. And that type of stuff is called total suspended particulate. That was the original dust rule, and then it got reduced to PM10 and then PM 2.5.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for the clarification.
Anything else?
That's it. Thank you, Bo.
Thank you, Bo.
Thank you, Bo.
Head out the door before they catch you. I might add that just prior to getting Bo's name last week, I called down and talked to the director at the DAQ, talked to him for probably close to an hour, and got a lot of good information from him, and they're really concerned. They really are concerned with what's going on, but again, just like Bo said, they're tied to federal regulations, and that's what they have to enforce. He said the best thing that we can do, and they hadn't been out here and done any monitoring for a while. They'd done them at the point of the mountain and the Brigham, but not South Weber. And he says that they base where they go and the monitoring that they do on the complaints that they receive from the citizens. And he says, it's not the complaint we receive from a city, it's the complaints we receive from the citizens. You can go online and there's the complaint form that you can fill out. And the more of those we get in, the more often they'll be out here to monitor the South Weber pits.
I called them in September, and they had 7 before that.
He said that until we had and I don't remember when it was, but the one real severe wind that we had in the fall, he says until that time, he says we hadn't gotten one complaint from South Weber. But since then we have.
Mayor, is that the EPA or the DAQ?
That's the DAQ.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think,
And the only way they'll do more than just their spot monitoring, because they do come, when they do their inspections, they actually have a spot monitor. They'll actually, if you get enough complaints, they'll do a longer term. That's the whole point of it. And that's what,
yeah, so,
because we've decided we can't afford that monitoring equipment. It's very, very expensive.
I don't know if I'm out of turn, I've never been to one of these, but we're, so there's no, from what I understand, there's no monitoring here in South Weber. This cat does.
No.
no.
And to clarify, he's relying on their logs they do to inspect them.
Bingo.
Wow. Yeah, okay.
Unless it happens to be windy the day they show up.
I suggested that he come in the morning. He told me because of the complaints, they'll be out. They don't monitor in the winter at all. It's only other than winter months. He said they would be out this spring. South Weaver would be one of the first ones that they would do. And asked him if he wouldn't please do it in the morning.
I think I just found my new 30-day daily challenge. Submit a complaint, join me up.
Okay,
Mayor? Mayor, can I say something?
Quinn, yes.
Yes.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, we definitely want people to submit complaints and things. I just want to point out, though, the monitoring that they did at Brigham City still doesn't exceed the standards. The monitoring they did recently at Point of the Mountain is still not exceeding the standards. So if we have them come here and they don't exceed the standards, which I doubt they will based off of, looking at other places, because it's the PM40, it's not the PM10, it's not the PM 2.5. We have to look at it from a different direction, kind of the nuisance standpoint that he was talking about and other things. I'm just afraid that if we put all of our eggs in the basket, that we're going to get monitored and we're going to get some bad data, it's really not going to happen, I don't think. California actually reduced their PM10 limit by a third. So theirs is 50. And looking at the Brigham City report they did a few years ago, it still didn't even exceed that 50 level that California said. So even if we wanted to copy California's internal requirements and get our legislature to drop it, or to get the DOQ to drop it, or whichever group it is, it's still, I feel it's still not going to address the issues. And so we've got to keep looking at other options.
We do. And we are, and probably that's what we're gonna have to do, is go to our legislature and our state senators, and we're planning on we've talked with Dave, getting a hold of them and getting them in here and talking with them and seeing what we can do, change those standards. So we are looking at that.
I would also like to suggest that we do look at, he did mention that the cities do have some power over the nuisance level, and that we do a kind of a deep dive investigation, whether it's through legal or through other cities, into what we can do on that level to change our code.
I will say on the nuisance ordinance, we have talked about updating the nuisance ordinance with dust. As the agreement with Staker Parsons stands, it grandfathers them through any changes to our dust ordinance. The other gravel pit wouldn't be subjected to the same thing, so they would be required to follow the new dust nuisance monitoring. Whatever changes, those will happen, but Staker Parsons agreement through 2025 would hold them to the former dust standards.
So we could get it in place before the 2025, and we're talking the same contract that really is kind of how do I put it, not really in our favor right now. So is there any, it
has like a baby teeth in it, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, is that it has nothing to really hold that accountable, so.
No, because their main permits with the state.
Yeah,
And so,
so it doesn't, we don't have anything except maybe that nuisance, so, okay.
So I have a question. If we were to get a dust code and the pit up above where they're not in our jurisdiction, how does that work? It doesn't matter. They're not within city limits, so
It
there's,
wouldn't apply.
well, that stinks. Okay, sorry, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Okay, moving along our action items, we'll go to our consent agenda. Approval of the February 15th, February 16th, February 22nd minutes, and the February check register. Any discussions on any of those? No discussions, I'll ask for a motion. All in favor, would you indicate?
Mayor, I'll make a motion. We approve consent agenda for February 15 minutes, February 16 minutes, February 22nd minutes, and February check register.
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye. Knew those words weren't coming out right. I had something wrong. Okay, item number 6, ordinance 2022-02, rezone partial 130330093 from commercial overlay to commercial highway. This application is made by the city. As we all know, the commercial overlay is not part of our general plan anymore. We recognize this and needed to make this change. Is there any discussion on this ordinance?
I do just want to say that we probably need to look at commercial highway again, because that specific lot that now is going to be switched over, which I do support. That means anything on the commercial highway can go in there, and we'll address that later on. But I mean, that goes all the way up to a hotel, and I'm definitely not a support of a hotel going in that little area. So something that we just need to address in code.
Okay. Any other discussion? Ask for a motion then.
Mayor, I make a motion for us to approve ordinance 2022-02 rezone parcel
13033093 from commercial overlay to commercial highway.
Seconded.
We have a second. We'll have a roll call vote, starting with Commissioner or Councilman Halverson.
Aye.
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 Motion carries. Item number 7, Resolution 22-11, award consulting engineering services firm to update transportation capital facility and impact fee facility plan. Any discussion on that? Dave, is there anything we need to mention on that?
No, the staff report had the
Got
information.
everything we needed?
If there's questions, we're happy to answer.
Okay. If we have no questions, then I'll ask for a motion.
I move to approve resolution 22-11, award consulting engineering services firm to upgrade transportation CFP and IFFP. The right amount,
As recommended, or,
as recommended.
okay.
Let's put the
Is
not
the
to
amount
exceed
in there?
amount. Yes,
Okay,
please.
let me grab it real quick.
34,249.
Thank you, Angie.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Seconded.
Have a roll call vote, starting with Councilman Dills.
Aye.
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 Sorry, aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. Next item, item number 8, 2022 strategic plan, continuing from our retreat that we've been having, and Dave will take us from here. Dave, we'll turn.
Hey, I know everybody is thrilled about this item. We've been working on this for weeks and weeks and weeks. And so this is kind of back to retreat style. And where we left off, if you had a chance to look in the workroom over there, the conference room, all of the posters that we've been working on, all of the list of items and everything is there for our beautiful viewing enjoyment. We have condensed that down and put it into a document for you that you can see, which restates those items that we've, again, been working on, that paints the picture of the vision of the community, our primary mission statement, and then breaks that into 6 strategic objectives. The hope tonight is to have the conversation about the priority list. We put some general items for measures of success. If you'd like to talk about the measures of success and would like to adjust those, feel free. But the main focus tonight was to talk about the list of initiatives. So to facilitate the conversation, we just want to go section by section and talk about the initiatives underneath that section. And this is where the council gets to do your heavy lifting and chart a course for the community. And so you get to talk through the list that was generated with staff and council brain power jointly over the last few weeks, and talk through them and say which ones are priority, which ones are not. Are there things that are great ideas that just don't have bandwidth? How do we want to go about this as a city? And this really is a chance for the council to take this and go. So with that, I will say, let's start with that community engagement section. We can go one by one. You've got the list of initiatives in front of you. And the idea is we kind of go through them and you say, yes, I think that's a priority. See if there's agreement amongst the council. We can pare that down to whatever you feel is an appropriate number for each section. And at that point, after we've gone section by section, I think it would behoove us to then take a pause and look across sections to see if there are ones in the various categories, the key directives that we may need to look sideways rather than just up and down within the own strategic directive. Again, just for a prioritization conversation. At that point, I would see us saying, are there any that, well, within each section, we need to say, are there any that we've missed? Are there things that we haven't talked about? And then, of course, to Joel's point at the end of our last meeting, we need to have the conversation. Are these the items that will actually move the needle in the ways that we identified are the ways we want to move the needle, and the areas that we feel should have our time and attention as the most important thing. So with that, I'll kick it back to the council to be able to have that conversation.
All right, well, I'm just going to say one thing I'd like to add under community engagement success measures. It could be another section of the last bullet point there, which would be increased or steady community involvement in city events, right? Make sure that I'm thinking any city event, whether that's our country fair days, Easter egg hunt, the trick or treat, anything like that.
So not just these three.
Correct.
All,
Yeah. But I think those others are important.
but I agree.
So that would be the only thing I would change right there.
Does the council agree?
Mm.
So moved.
I do.
All right, look at that. Success measure 1. Done.
Would you like me to facilitate the conversation
So are we
more?
supposed to be going through the initiatives?
Yes.
So we want to identify like 5 of those 14 initiatives or 3 of them that would be our top priority.
I think 3 to 5 would be a great
3 to 5.
amount to focus on. There may be initiatives or there may be key directive areas that you feel need more attention, or there are more initiatives within that area that needs more attention. And so I don't know if you have to hold yourself to exactly 3 to 5, but I think that's a good place to start to say, what are the top priorities here?
Okay, I will, since everyone's being really quiet tonight, I'll say, I put number 4 on there because we had a TV up here. When we got our new system, we had the old TVs in the basement. It would be pretty easy for us to update events on a screen at the FAC. So that is not necessarily a huge directive, more of this is a pretty easy one to check off that helps promote the city. So I still feel like we should do it, but it's probably not in the top 5. That would be something simple for staff to maybe do.
And it would be a pretty easy one if that's really what
Do we have TV?
Chris wants.
We have one extra TV down here that was right there.
And are you
Yeah.
saying we'd put like city updates? and
Yeah,
that
just
kind of
have it
stuff?
on a loop that shows, so like things that are going on at the Family Activity Center for people when they come in, and things for the city. And we can even have, different random blurbs from the city's website as we update upcoming events or whatnot. But it would be a pretty easy way for us to utilize our facility there.
Some of the items we have on our sign, can we loop that onto that? TV?
Absolutely, it's so easy.
And our social media.
So one thought is perhaps this item is maybe an individual task as part of a larger initiative.
That's what I'm trying to get at,
Right,
yes,
so
thank
this
you.
is an easy thing to check off the list, but maybe it's part of a larger one where it's integrating visual communication media throughout the city, right?
It would fall right underneath the one below it.
Yeah, that's
Community,
what I was
more
gonna say.
information and more topics to the citizens.
Mhm.
It's just one of those
Yeah.
ways you can do that as a subcategory of that
Yeah.
as your main initiative.
I think it's easy to get down to a project level conversation. What are the specific projects? What are the specific action items? And I think the hope is to stay more at kind of the larger initiative level of, we want to increase our communication through all methods or something like that. And then, yeah, if you identify these and say, that's a great task under that larger umbrella, then I think that's wonderful. But
Okay,
yeah, the
I'm
idea.
with you. I'm on
okay.
the same page.
Great.
Okay.
So
I
then on
think-
that note, looking at 3 and 8 and to a degree 10, I definitely think that it behooves us to have a more communication process back and forth type of conversation with the citizens. And those, whether it's the big city function that gets all of us together, all the citizens together, or the town hall meetings where they actually get to come and tell what's on their mind. I think both of those are really big in my opinion.
That was 3.
3 and 8.
3, 8, and then 10, which is also another town hall. But
So is the larger initiative you're describing the create more opportunities for dialogue amongst the council and the community?
Yeah, because as we're looking at this, we have push information, which
For
is,
sure.
you know, we've got a lot of different sources and we're talking about those in here, whether they are the texting service, additional things going through the newsletter, pumping it out through the website. That's a push.
Mhm.
That's sending it to them, and anyone who wants to hear it can just look on that. But I think having the dialogue back to us, I think that's just as important, because now citizens get to be heard, and they are heard through our public comments and a few of the other things. But I think this kind of gives it a chance for it to really have that face-to-face communication that I think would help.
Does the
So-
full council feel that general initiative of establishing more opportunities for back and forth dialogue? Is that fair to
Yes.
say that that's one of the top priorities?
Yeah, I think we need to have at least one, if not two, town hall style meetings.
So then underneath that, we can put town hall meetings, we can put additional city events that maybe have opportunity for the council to interact. We have citizen survey there. That was an idea that was thrown out a little bit. I don't know if you want to say, yes, that's one of the kind of project level ideas. But more of those is the general idea. I think we're all in agreement there. We can put together more of the kind of the project ideas. And then of course the council can provide feedback when we, flesh that out a little bit.
Yeah,
Okay.
I've noticed other cities where they actually on the website will have, make a suggestion, make a comment or review something, so that they have, feedback, whether it's just general for overall or for the Family Activity Center or whatever, just that open, send it to the city. So,
A general kind of comment box.
yeah. I
But
know
not
it's a
public
horrible
comment,
place-
not public comment that goes to
Right.
agenda items, but more of just operationally and
Yeah.
general satisfaction level of city services, that
Yeah,
kind
you
of.
get you get a lot of junk with those, I'll be honest, but you also get, the real stuff rises to the top, let's put it that way. Kind of like the dust mitigation has, so.
So I feel like if we were to just kind of create broader umbrellas, number 5, or if we look at 5, number 2, 4, 6, 7, 11, 12, 14, and 1, and 13 basically fall under that pushing information out. And then I put back, you push, and then back is 3, which has options 8 and 10. So I feel like, those two, but number 5 and number 3 kind of covers all of those other bullet points if we wanted to put under those umbrellas.
Did you get that, Dave?
I basically heard it as 2 large initiatives. We want to be good at pushing information out, and we want to be better at creating opportunities to interact in a dialogue sense. So
Yeah,
kind of both.
I see number 5, number 8, and number 11 as being maybe the key initiatives, and the others are more tasks that fit under those.
Yeah.
So moved.
Okay, let's go on to safety.
Just so I understand correctly, 2 major initiatives under public engagement. I don't want to misunderstand, so thank you
I
for.
feel like number
indulging
11
me.
would just kind of come under number 5 and number 3 naturally by us doing our work.
Yes,
It just
agreed.
kind of comes naturally.
Yeah.
So not its own separate thing, but
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, it almost seems like number 11 is a general idea, and then you have the tasks underneath it.
I know. Agreed.
Is number 11 more of the definition of our community engagement section?
Let's provide a trustworthy source of information. Yeah, I feel like the more we push things out and the more we're willing to invite comments back to us, that builds that trust. So by doing 5 and 3, we build 11.
Okay. And so then the pushing, so the opportunities is 8, 3, and 10, and the pushing out better, you said was 5.
I have 2, so 5 is the main, like communication or information.
Okay.
And then under that would be number 2, 4, 6, 7, 11, 12, 14, 1, 13, and 9.
No,
Okay, so let's talk about which one of those you'd like to do under,
Oh, you just said,
Push out
hey, we
better.
want to go like
You wanna
just
go
a
big.
couple these, I'm just saying.
you're
I'm
absolutely
not
right that
sure
all
when
of
you
those
want-
things could be
So
done.
I guess I'm confused
How-
on what do you want the initiatives? Like we have our 2 initiatives and then we have all of those things that fall under those umbrellas, are we hashing out what's under the umbrella right now too?
I think right now, let's talk initiative. Let's
Yeah.
establish that. And then if we have time, we want to talk through what's the priority projects there.
Okay.
The staff can also kind of give a suggestion of priority
Yeah.
projects underneath those initiatives that you can then respond to
Yeah,
as
my
well.
point was just that under those two options.
Under what
please,
two are you saying again?
Number 5, communicate
Okay,
more
I
information.
agree with that one.
And 3 was, well, it's kind of a combination of what Joel said, 3, 8, and 10.
3
which
and
is
8.
basically giving information back.
Yeah, so 2 functions.
All of
Okay.
those bullet points fall under those.
Do you
2
feel
points.
like number 11 is separate? I feel like number 11 is a
I
good
do
initiative.
not. I feel like number 11 comes with number 5 and
Number
3.
11 will come when you do the other 3.
Yeah,
Okay. So what I'm hearing is
Just the
5 and
2.
8.
yeah, just the 2 initiatives.
Blair, where are you now? You're gonna flippy flop?
Nope, I'm in agreement.
Okay, there you go.
Okay.
Let's move on to safety.
So
Did we file for safety sidewalk funds this year, you know?
Yes, we did. Brandon has
we
usually
did.
handled that for us, but yes, we did.
When do you hear back on that?
Sometime in March,
March,
April.
so anytime, huh?
I have not heard anything yet. I can reach out and follow up.
So
Okay, I'm gonna reach out on a limb and say this could be fairly easy, because I thought a lot of these were already, when we were talking about initiatives versus like individual projects. A lot of these are projects,
Right.
but increase police presence and engagement, establish a long-term law enforcement solution, and possibly the improving and implementing CERT would be our 3 main goals, and everything else could fall underneath. Well, dust mitigation needs to maybe be in there too, but
Same
that-
with-
Well, but
you
that's
could get
just
pretty
mitigation
involved.
equipment, Yeah.
yeah.
Well, what about like the safety portions, like crosswalks, sidewalks,
But-
those C signs, what would that fall under?
Those are tasks underneath it, right?
Yeah, under which one though?
One question with crosswalks and sidewalks is determining, does it fall under safety or does it fall
It fall
under
under municipal.
Infrastructure.
Yeah, to me, that is an infrastructure. That's a
Right.
municipal utilities.
Yeah.
type.
Because it is to do with safety, but it doesn't really fall under
Right.
safety in my mind.
Okay,
But these
But
are
they're
based on
important to do.
committees, Right?
no, that's what I'm.
No,
confused
but
about. We're
that's-
not based on community.
No, but
Infrastructure's right here.
It can go either way.
it could go
I see
in
what you're
safety. I mean, we call it safety sidewalk type stuff, but
I think the point of those types of projects, right, is to make transportation safe, all types, right? Whether you're traveling on bike or feet or car or whatever. So it is under the safety umbrella, but we can put it in either location.
So Haley, maybe you're thinking instead of we have number 6, which is increase police presence and engagement, and number 9, establish long-term solution. You're thinking maybe add a increase.
increase the overall
Sidewalk.
safety.
Yeah, overall
Something like
safety, I
that.
feel like should
That'd
just
be
be
more of
one.
an initiative.
Yeah.
Than the other things
Yeah.
fall underneath it.
When you say overall safety, help me understand a little bit more.
I don't know.
Lower
Stupid
crime
word.
rates, quicker response times, reduce accidents and speeding.
That is the.
I wonder who wrote that.
Saying,
I mean, you
So how
could
would
possibly
we-
say the mobility safety for
I
all
mean, I
the
guess-
sidewalks and the
Yeah. I guess
crosswalks.
it could happen under, I just know that I've gotten so many calls from kids almost getting hit because
Yeah.
there's no crosswalk
Right.
and there's no sidewalks. So to me, that's public safety, but if we just do
You're right. It is.
police and SIR and enforcement,
Then
then
you're right.
we don't really
Well,
have
that, you
that.
almost need police or enforcement together, then some kind of overall safety. I know you want me to explain that, but I don't know how to. And then you would have the, what was the other one?
I think if you do transportation safety, then that
There you go.
covers
Pedestrians.
speeding and it covers mobility.
Well, one of the
yeah, either
success
that or
measures,
active and passive.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because-
one of those success measures is reduce accidents and speeding. So now we're just saying, how are we going to reduce accidents and speeding? We're going to increase our safety infrastructure, our sidewalks, our crosswalks, right? We want
That
to
works.
put a focus on traffic safety, mobility safety.
So under that would put things like the crosswalks, the moving the city sign type of things, because that's on here, I noticed. So.
You could call
Yeah,
it
number 4.
crosswalks and sidewalks, pedestrian safety as well. Pedestrian safety.
Yeah.
Would you like the city sign on there?
Yes.
We have to address that sign, one way or
Need to
another,
address it.
we've got to address that sign.
Okay, we can put that under mobility safety. Okay, and then we have the law enforcement side of it, which it sounded like the initiative there was,
More of established long-term law enforcement solution.
that's the initiative. And underneath that, or is the increased police presence its own concept?
Well, and
like
up on
those
the top success measure, we actually put it as proactive enforcement, which I think when we look at both long-term and short-term, getting Davis County officers or getting police presence here, that is definitely more of a proactive. I mean, we've got the guy with the speed gun right there and also watching the other areas. And then all of everything crosswalks, all of the signage, all of those kind of things are definitely more of a passive of here's the infrastructure, I think was a good way to put it. But yeah, I think those are the two divisions really.
Okay,
Or
so the law
initiative.
enforcement side, as you described, 6 and 9, kind of put that into one statement, one initiative.
Mhm.
And then
So
any of
moved.
the other ones underneath that you feel apply to.
Okay, smart growth and planning.
Man, excellent. Sometimes I just gotta get out of the way, huh?
No, you're doing a very good job.
That's right.
Okay, take it away then, somebody.
This one was by far the hardest one.
So a lot of this, okay, sorry, hold on. let me read this.
My perspective on this one was that it was difficult in the last meeting to define. And so we may need to take a little bit more time to define it tonight.
You can
Well,
notice-
Or maybe the initiative is,
Yeah, I
let's
was gonna
define it
say,
together.
If we just make it so that, okay, we really need to define what we're dealing with and how we're going to look at it going forward. So I mean, it's more of a define what that, because we're talking about the general plan, we talk about the whole build out, we talk about a city center, we're talking about the development code. So I mean, really, other than we have to have plant trees up at the top, I think most of it is just defining. And I think that would be just one big initiative if we could actually do that correctly.
Yeah, when I was putting together this list for Dave, we didn't have a definition. That's my fluffy definition. And then I did add the success measure of define success in there. I think that's
Well, most of these fall under just updating our city code or creating city code. And then the other part falls under general plan, basically.
I will express a concern. The
Mhm.
idea of let's define it together through the action of updating city code makes updating city code much more difficult because we don't have the guiding star there. We don't know what we're trying to point our city code to. And so every conversation about how should this city code be would be an act of defining as we go. Although that we can do it that way, I think it becomes harder.
Yeah, you're right.
And we've seen that in some of the code updates that have come through, right? That we're looking at them all individually, but then we're not maybe taking a step back and looking at okay, how does this really accomplish anything? We're fixing a problem, we're fixing a gap, but and perhaps we're running out of fingers to plug the holes, and now we just need to see about maybe, do we buy a new bathtub? Do we get repair bath to come fix it? Whatever. Right.
Well, but I think the hesitation is the new bathtub is a new general plan, and none of us want to do that.
I'm not saying general
So I
plan
mean,
on that. I'm saying, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I was referring to the code, not general plan.
Well, but that is, as we look at all of what we want to gather together, they are parts of what the future of what the entire city will look at a 30,000 foot. And we could probably take the general plan as the largest portion of this is what people believe we ought to be doing, and then look at some of these issues and try to really come up with a strategy to move code to match what general plans is already inside it. And I think I've talked to you about this before, where other cities actually put in their general plan the goals and the steps to do it. We're just doing it the other way around. We're actually going to put it as an initiative. So, but yeah, maybe that's what we need to look at is, okay, what will it take to accomplish with our definitions here to actually meet the general plan that we say we're moving towards, and then get code to go for it.
But to me, the number one item, or number one, understanding the cost to citizens kind of directs where we want to go. Until we understand that, I'm not sure I'm clear on, what we want to do with smart growth.
Well, I think we talked about city center, like heart of the city, right? We haven't really defined that either, and perhaps that's something we define a little bit more in this portion as well, so that we know what. Because I mean, we have identified the future location of City Hall, but that's also potentially tied to the heart of the community, but we don't know that for sure, right?
Well, and part of that whole discussion is the revigorization of South Weber, and we're not at that point where we really need that yet. But, this is a long-term projection, and it does take time to buy the land and get different things into to motion. So, yeah.
So can I ask again a pointed question to see if the council is thinking the same things or thinking different things here? When we talk about the general plan and the idea of giving it more clarity, sometimes I see head nods and sometimes I don't. Is the general plan as it stands today the guiding document that we are targeting? Do you feel as council members, as land use decisions have come up, that has been the guiding document that explains what we are trying to accomplish? If we feel like it's missing something and it needs clarity, I think that's pointing us in a direction. If we feel like let's hold to that, and the majority of you feel that way, I think now is a good time to have that hashed out.
That's like a super pointed question.
Well, I can
And
answer.
that is why we're here tonight with direction, right?
If you look at the amount of input into that general plan, it's 10 times what was put in. It might even be more than that, than what was put into the previous general plan. Whether I personally agree with every single aspect of it, that's a whole nother story. I think it's where the overwhelming majority of the community thinks it should go. There's a lot of people who always have asked why, we said this the other night, why don't we have a downtown little small town feel right here? Why haven't we pushed to have that developed? But that's what I wanted. But that's not what the majority of the community wanted, and that's why it is listed as something different in our projected land use. And so for me to sit up here and say, do I feel like that's the way it should go? I can't honestly say yes. I 100% agree with that. But that is that's where our general plan is. So that's the way we're going. And I don't want to stir that up and say no, just because I feel differently than that. I don't know if that's the way the rest of the council feels. I'm sure that we all have our own opinions. So it's hard to answer your question. But that would be the only issue I disagree with. I agree with the rest of the land use basically across the whole general plan, except for one little piece of it. Because I don't feel that we have a community center anywhere in our, if we want a community feel, where are we going to do that? At a park? We're going to have a downtown? That would be the only thing I would throw out there that I don't agree with the general plan. I don't see that anywhere on there, because we put the kibosh on that on a big piece of property already to have that community, which was offered to us. I'm not saying I liked it. I'm just saying that was offered on a piece of property. Could it be at the other end? Possibly, but it's only on one or two pieces of property, and it's not something the city can push forward. That
I don't think that's a community feel type atmosphere on either one of those. So,
Oh, I agree. I agree 100% with that. The general plan, we put a lot of work in that and a lot of citizen comments on that, and that's what the citizens want. And I think where it's as new as it is, we've got to stick with it for a while. And there are, some, like Blair said, a couple of tweaks that maybe we would like, but I think the citizens as a whole, that's what they want. It's what they expect us to carry out. And so I think that's what we need to do.
The only thing that I see is commercial, because of COVID and because of online, that part has changed. And I don't know if that means that how we dealt with commercial in the general plan still is valid. I don't know. I don't pretend to know on it. We've got such a small amount of the commercial in it, but at the same time, is a strip mall anywhere feasible? Is drive-throughs the only thing that we have, which means, yeah, really just the South Weaver Drive is the only place we're going to have that commercial aspect anywhere. I don't know, but I do know that definitely commercial has changed, and so that's the only thing that I'd bring up on it is just, I don't know, maybe we need to reevaluate that and make sure that is under the same assumptions that the general plan was made at that time for, because it is to be amended, but I agree. There has been so much work into it, so much discussion. I think there is a great vision of it in there, and it's just clarifying how to get to that vision in my mind. But yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I agree with Blair. I mean, I think there's a couple tweaks, some wordage. Is that a word? Wordage? I don't know. Verbiage. Thank
and
you.
wordsmithing.
Wordsmithing. But I don't know that that's necessarily something that needs to be bumped up. I mean, I think we talk about looking at our general plan every 2 to 5 years is what it says in our general plan. And I think some of those things, including the commercial, we may have just a better understanding of what commercial looks like in a couple of years versus what it looks like we're still in recovery. I think there's way more things that we should be looking to our city code to versus our general plan.
Okay, Dave.
you don't have to say anything.
You don't
if
have
want
to say anything. if you
Okay.
don't.
Yeah, I always want to say something. Okay. I mean, I agree. I think when we brought this up about having a mission statement, it doesn't have a feel. I feel like maybe the wordage is very,
Vague.
it's almost non-emotional, which I know we have to stick with, but it's so like factual that it doesn't really have a feeling to it. And I think that's what's missing in it. But saying that, too much input, too much time, too much money to go back and open it again.
So I've heard everybody say,
Except for Quinn.
except for Quinn.
Did we lose Quinn?
He's
I'm
there.
still here. I
What do
think
you
it,
think?
well, I think the general plan, should be our guiding document until something comes up that drives us to change it. There are some areas that probably need some clarification that could be, we state it later, modified in a simple way instead of having to go through a full general plan area. But, the comment about the mission statement, I mean, our current general plan says appropriately managing growth, vigorously pursue the retention of the small town charm, maintain a safe and neighborly environment, promote a network of trails and bike paths for the good of the residents, capitalize on local recreation activities, promote ourselves as the gateway to Northern Utah recreation. And that one I probably would change, but again, that's a personal thing. Kind of like Blair was saying, I don't know that that's, agreed by everybody, but I think we've got somewhat of a mission statement in there.
You have that up already.
Okay. So a couple of you have talked about clarity, or you've used the phrase gaps in the general plan. In my mind, this idea of city center or heart, right? What that looks like is a gap that we could clarify or have an initiative, clarify what that means within the growth of the community. You talk about kind of having a gap in, oh, I just lost the other idea that I was going to share about gaps. Brings it back. I think if there are ways that you feel there is a gap in the general plan right now, not in the overall direction, but if you feel like there's a gap in definition or a gap in clarity, then I think now's the time to say, identify, let's plug those gaps, right? Let's clarify those spots, not to redo the general plan, but to give it some additional meat, some additional clarity. So when people look at it, or when the staff looks at it, when council looks at it, when a development comes in, we know what we're trying to accomplish there. Again, the general plan is that guiding document for land use. And I'm not trying to make a second guess the general plan. That wasn't the intent. It was to clarify whether or not, you know, a majority of the city council wants to tackle that as an initiative. And it sounds like a majority of the council wants to add clarity to the general plan in order to provide direction to the code updates. Am I misreading that?
So the way I see it is the general plan is the guiding document that code is now written off of it. So when we talk about the clarity and the gaps that are in there, the gaps are going to, I see the gaps being filled more with city code than I do with changing the general plan.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and the only time that general plan really would need to be updated is if we're changing a zone. So I see the code being what fills that gap.
Okay, that's
That's
good.
me.
That's good clarification, because again, in my mind, general plan is general in nature. And so if there are areas that we want to understand better, that, yeah, code is where the real rubber meets the road on what we require and what we don't require. And so if overall those land uses as provided in the projected land use map is what we're generally good with, but we want to add a how through the code, I think what you've just described is kind of the initiative section of use city code to clarify. I see it as three. I see it as three initiatives. Let me say it this way. One is to define the heart. One is to define look and feel. You brought up design guidelines. You didn't use that word, but you described design guidelines as a missing piece of the general plan. And I think that's a missing piece of code. And then other sections of code that can help clarify how to go about that general plan. But I see those as maybe three initiatives underneath smart growth. If you all see that, then just say, wow, genius. If you don't, then tell me what I'm missing.
I would agree.
Wow, genius.
So move.
Second.
No, I agree.
Okay, so is that a priority of the council of add design guidelines of
Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay.
No, I want to hear them.
design guidelines, city center or heart? We have a dialogue of what that means and define what we're trying to do with land use around a city center idea or a heart idea. Not knowing the answer now, but saying let's work on clarifying that, and then identifying other areas of city code that need update in order to better align the general plan with city code with general plan.
Wow, genius.
I hope I didn't manipulate you to call me that, because it feels like a.
No.
I was referring to the mayor.
I will say this before we move on, just so one of the areas of friction that I often encounter on the growth is when a project meets the general plan requirements, but then I hear, no, that's not what I want there. That's a difficult position to put me in.
I agree. Sorry to cut you off,
No, you're,
but that's what the citizens asked for.
yes.
So
Well, and I'm saying that friction is not necessarily between staff and residents, but I also feel it between staff and planning commission and staff and councils. That's not really what we want there. And it's like, but it meets
So that's,
Well, but
That's the
there's, I
clarity
think
that
there's a
I'm looking
difference though,
for.
because on the city staff side, you're looking at the zoning part of it and whether it meets the general plan zoning. Now, whether it meets the vision, which is the fluff, if you will, that's inside it, that talks about the smaller city, the city feel of it, all of that, really, that's where the planning commission should be spending their time trying to figure out what that vision is. And that's why the planning commission has pretty much unlimited power to be able to have public meetings and whatnot to draw in, okay, we're saying this, here's this new project. We would really like to have some type of public comment or town hall on what does that mean? That's part of their purview. That's part of.
But
what
if
they
it
do.
meets city code, they can't say no.
Right. They can't go past city
That's the
code.
problem. They don't get a lot of the fluffy, feel-good stuff because they just have to follow checks and boxes on planning commission. That's their job.
Right. So then as policy advisors, they should turn around and say, okay, this doesn't meet that look and feel, if you will, that we're seeing in the general plan. Here's what kind of code change would do that. And then that comes up because that's part of what their job is.
And I totally agree with you on that. I truly do. The problem is we've got like 6 projects to make that happen and they're all done by the time it's
true.
And that's the frustration
true.
I've felt is we don't get those 4 and 5 chances for them to make that
Yeah.
deal. You just don't.
No, you're right, because what we said before, one and done. You know, the R7, that over there, it's, okay, that one's done, and, okay,
I think that we need to give ourselves a little bit of credit, that the general process, right, is to identify gaps and you try to fix those.
And we've
But
done-
also, I think what I'm hearing is a little bit of an initiative, if I may, that we want to be proactive on code changes. Not that we can be in front of everything, right? There's just no way for that. But as I see it, there's a desire to try to be out in front as much as possible. And I know we have tried to be out in front. I'm not saying we're not being out in front. I'm just saying that it feels like there's a space there in the initiative area for us to say we want to be more proactive in city code elements. And so which city code elements do you feel we need to be most proactive on? I know Haley's done a really good thought exercise from the code committee perspective on committee priorities, and she's prepared to talk through that. I don't know if we have to do it right this second, but the idea of which codes need to be higher on the list so that we can try to be out in front of stuff, I think is a real conversation piece. So this initiative of let's use city code and get out in front as much as possible. I think we can flesh that out a little bit later on what city code, but that to me seems like it lines up exactly with what you're describing as one of your initiatives is as much as possible, try to be in front of projects. And again,
Wow, genius.
I know that is an almost impossible task, but we do the best that we can, right?
But
And
you
we
have to
want
get that
be better
feedback.
at
You're
it.
right.
Right.
And we want to be better at it.
Mhm.
Did that answer your question, Trevor?
didn't solve it though.
no. It answered it, but it didn't solve it. I
We're
think
not gonna
just
solve
in
it all.
general, and that's always gonna be the rub, right? But as the city council, and we've got a lot of good legwork done on the vision, right? And the mission is it's just marrying those together that I don't want to continue to feel as if it's me against the world. And it doesn't feel like that all the time, but there are projects that it feels like I'm out here on a limb that I'm just holding to the code and to what I see, and I get hit from all sides sometimes. So I think just the clarification on look and feel, city center would really help in that. In that.
Well, but on that,
conversation.
I would actually then turn that back towards you of, if you see areas, because you're the one dealing with the developers from day one, yeah, you should be part of that loop saying, hey, listen, I'm seeing, we want this kind of vision, but there's nothing that describes that in code. We need to get that in, and we just need to have the process for that being brought before the city council. And whether that goes through any type of committee or not, it really is irrelevant. It's just you're dealing with it, let's hear it. Same thing with the planning commission. There has to be that loop that brings it in that says, this is a gap we've got. Because we're working on so many other things that can't be, our focus.
So I actually wrote that down as well, that idea of establishing a standard operating procedure, a process for not only identifying these code sections when they come up, but then how do we then flip that around and have it return to the council so that you can make decisions and legislate appropriately? Right? That I think is probably underneath this, this code update idea. Maybe it's its own initiative, I don't know, but define that process so that it becomes very clear of what's that feedback loop, right? Of when we run into code issues. And to Trevor's point, I think sometimes we run into a code issue that aligns with the general plan, but doesn't align with the desires of the planning commission or the council. And other times we run into code issues that does align with the general plan or does align with the council, but it's just not there or it's not clear or something like that. So again, I think establishing that process would be helpful. Because there are so many, here's where I'm getting at. There are so many code items that could use attention. How do we determine which ones need the most attention becomes very difficult. And I think we've run into that as code committee is we've had something that's needed to be addressed and we start addressing it and we realize that touches so many other aspects of code. And so you got to set up the dominoes properly. You can't just put one line in one section of code and think that that's going to work, right? It's so holistic and everything touches, and that becomes a little bit problematic and why we have to tackle large sections of code at times instead of just one minor thing. Sometimes we can do it with the minor change, but anyway, I'm getting long-winded, but priorities is a really important piece of our code update. So I think that's a good one to flesh out a little bit more. Okay, anything else on smart growth and planning? Okay, moving right along.
2, 3, and 4.
Fiscal.
You got it.
2, 3, and 4.
I think number 1 is a task under number 2. I think number 5 is a task. 6 and 7 are tasks. 8, I'm undecided. That's where Angie stands right now.
2, what did you, 2?
2, 3, and 4.
2, 3, and 4 fall under 1? Or
Well, I
1,
think
3, and 4 fall
number
under 2?
1 falls under implement revenue
So
philosophy.
under 2 is 1, 3, and 4. And
No.
You see 2 as its own initiative.
I see 2 as its own.
yeah.
1's underneath it.
And
One's
1's underneath
Also
it.
underneath it.
And what else is underneath
And 3 could be. Well, I don't know about 3. I like 2 and 4. 2 and 4. That's what I got. 2 and 4.
So do 6 and 7 go under 2?
I think so.
Yeah.
They seem like tasks to me that would go under number 2.
Is number 3 a typo? Do we have develop a long-term or is it develop and long-term plan? Which one were you meaning?
It
Oh.
could be a typo.
It's a
or-
typo.
It could be what was on the sticky note. I can't remember.
Or a hand typo.
It was the end of a long night, I'm sure.
Because that could be, oh, sorry. I mean, you could replace the word parks with any infrastructure,
Assets,
really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
City amenities.
Yeah. Yeah. Amenities or assets.
So the thing is implement ongoing revenue philosophies with pretty much everything else here being projects under that umbrella.
I think so. I think that, but as we do that, one of the first projects needs to be to create a visual. So we're dealing with pie charts and graphs, which is a quicker way for the council to be able to understand what we're dealing with than the gigantic budget printout. So that would be nice to be able to, as we're going through it, be able to have big categories in a pie chart or something. That's the only reason that was on there, was for understanding. That's it.
On number 4, that was my suggestion. I I don't know if that is an initiative or if that would be a task. Or if it's a philosophy, I don't know.
Well, we can only go up to like what, 23.5% or something,
For the general fund, you can only have reserve up to 35%.
35.
We're not quite there though.
No.
We were at 25%, which was the limit. Then they increased it
Right,
to
I
go
was
up to
like,
35%, and we're in process of trying to get there. I think we're at, yeah, max is
27.
27 right now.
I think number 4 would go under number 2.
Yeah. The more I look at it, I agree with you, Quinn.
But you can't just address the revenue philosophy. I think, we're talking about long 10-year operations and maintenance projections. We have to have something that deals with expenditures. Where does the money, you can got your revenues, but also long-term ongoing revenue expenditure philosophies.
Yeah, you could revise number 2 to be revenue and expenditure philosophies.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I think you can just look the revenue side, you're not looking at
Good point.
the other part.
I like that. I agree.
Is it genius?
It's
Almost.
So close.
You can't just dole that out for everything.
All things in moderation. I got it.
So the two major initiatives under fiscal sustainability is the ongoing revenue philosophies and establishing ongoing expenditure philosophies.
I think that kind of sums up everything.
And then the other items are kind of projects that help establish those things.
Yes.
Okay?
I like what Joel said though on the visual budget model.
Mhm.
I'm a visual kind of guy. I like that.
So establish more visuals in budget
Yeah. I think so.
preparation and explanation.
Yeah.
So I know we had a little bit of a conversation about this 2 years ago, something like that. There's software that helps us do that. Otherwise, it's just Excel magic, which takes some time, but can be done. And so when I hear you say create a visual, I'm not saying that equals get software tools that make that easy,
No.
but
Excel is pretty dang easy on it. I mean, it's just column, go to the top, tell you when it and chart.
But he's got to input all that
Yeah,
data.
that's what you've got to export it over to them. So as long as we've got a tool to export it, send it to me. I mean, it's really not.
I'm not saying making charts and graphs is difficult, but I think the explanation, right, and providing what you're describing is just a better, or I don't know, more visual elements to the budget
Well,
document.
it's going to take a lot of work to go from what we've got listed in the accounts right now over to a generalization so that it can be put into these categories so we can see, okay, out of this much of the budget, here is how much we're actually spending here, here's how much we're spending in this direction. So it's not a simple task. I completely understand that. I'm just saying that it's a word. There's no software.
Sure.
Unless that's how we export it, but it shouldn't. I mean, everything should be exported over. Even if it's just a comma delimited file.
Now you're using words. Nobody knows what you're talking about.
It's wording.
But he knows what he's doing.
Hey.
He already volunteered to do
There are
it.
some people over here
That's
that
exactly it.
You're itching for that genius.
Did you notice the mayor only picked up on the volunteerism over there?
Mark, send me the stuff.
I would almost bet that Mark's software has a little bit of
Yeah.
that capability.
What we were looking at before and what a lot of cities have done is taking it the next step further. And instead of just having this one document that has that in, having a web presence that's interactive that you can drill, that a citizen can call up certain information and create their own visuals and add pictures and so forth and have it an interactive, more interactive web tools type things with that, which is an area that a lot of cities have done for their transparency.
And that would be a great phase two. I think.
But that goes beyond just creating charts and graphs to make it so that it's more interactive and more user-friendly from a website base rather than just a physical document that as you pull it up. And so that's where we are right now. It's just in that physical, but we had brought
in that portion that just goes the next step to saying this is an interactive, web-based drill down, find things on your own and ask and get the answers to your questions interactively through software tools.
Yeah, I don't think we're asking, hey, do you want to purchase the software? That's not what we're asking, but just this idea of we want to increase our communication, we want to increase, that ability for the citizens to understand it. What is a powerful visual image for one person is irrelevant to somebody else. And so, yeah, we just want to increase that and make that better. And that's what I hear you saying is just put some more visuals so that you've got both, right? You've got the numbers if somebody wants to drill into the numbers. You've got a chart and a graph that if somebody wants to look at the chart and graph and gather data, just different ways of digesting information. Okay. Anything else with that section?
No. Move along.
You guys are so
Infrastructure.
efficient.
These are all tasks.
They are. So as you look at the success measures, what does that capture what we're trying to do?
It does. I mean, it does.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's facilitating and maintaining your capital facilities plans, your ongoing maintenance are more of the general initiatives and the others are tasks underneath those.
Your operation and maintenance, yeah.
Mhm.
Yep. So easy.
That was an easy one.
Did you get that? Dave, you good with that?
No, not at all.
Oh, Dave, we're not trying to make it hard on you.
Measurements to initiatives.
The measures
I mean-
are more of the initiatives that you
Well, they
want to-
are. I mean, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Maintaining our infrastructure is an initiative, right? We don't always have to create new or build new. It can be maintain the system that we've
Exactly.
got.
Yeah.
That's what I
Exactly.
hear you saying.
Exactly.
Okay.
Is there any infrastructure that's missing in your vision for the city,
Good
though?
Say that again?
Is there any infrastructure that's missing, like sidewalks
They're in
Well,
there.
but I think that's
That's
a,
tough.
or,
but that's a project underneath that
right?
part, yes.
And fiber internet. Check mark that.
I moved that from like in process to completed chart
That's
on
nice.
Trello the other day. Like, oh, we're done with that. It was really nice. I
Just
can't think of
asking
anything
questions.
off the
I'm
top
not
of
leading
my
you into
head.
anything specific.
I know,
I'm just
needing the
asking
witness.
you.
I think that covers everything. I can't think of anything else off the top of my head.
We can kind of.
Are you
flesh that out
alert?
later.
Are you trying to lead us into
No,
something?
I'm not.
I mean,
at
I'm
all.
reading between lines.
So our main initiative is just maintain what we've got and nothing.
Well, and plus
Well-
the capital facilities
Nothing,
plan,
yeah.
I mean, which obviously is our build out and
That's our
our
future
growth
planning.
and all of that.
Right.
You're I'm interrupting Blair. You're thinking like a public works building? Is this what you're,
He's not
I'm not leading anyway. I'm just making sure our bases are covered because we have, the definition is invest in the upkeep and maintenance of existing infrastructure and plan for new infrastructure development needs, which is covered in the capital facilities plan. But are there any other things that aren't part of a capital facilities plan or something to support the growth?
I mean,
That's all I'm asking.
the two buildings would be one of those things underneath there that we're missing. I mean, eventually, those are the things you have to plan for
yeah,
and you have to long-term goal for.
We currently, and we've talked about this internally with staff, that we look at our enterprise funds and we have great capital facilities plans there. But do we have a true capital facilities plan on the general fund infrastructure? No, we
That's a
don't.
great idea.
You know, we look at those, because we can get impact fees, but expanding so that all infrastructure of the city falls under a capital facilities plan, which means includes city hall, includes our fire station, includes long-term FAC, whether those, we'd have an expansion of our fire station. But you know, at some point, is that needed? But looking at these outside of just all things, you know, and
Sounds like
I
you've
look at,
identified an initiative.
yeah,
as,
I think the part of the
establish a-
initiative is to establish
general
capital
fund.
facilities plans on all infrastructure segments of the city. And we've concentrated heavily on enterprise funds. And there, we've kind of left some of the others out and just saying, well, we know at some point this has to happen.
Yeah.
It even goes to the long term. When we look at, we talked about build out, what's going to be needed at build out. So when we got to some of the other ones, I thought, okay, Joel and both Joel and Quinn have brought out, okay, what does everything look like at build out and what is the cost at build out? Which we talk about build out, but we don't have everything that, yeah, what does city look like at build out? And then what does our infrastructure look like at build out? And how does it support it at build out? Right now, we look at just right now, so. But my main one was just on all infrastructure, expand our capital facilities plans. And if nobody agrees with me, fine.
Oh, I can.
No, I do too.
I think that's a great way to summarize it.
Yeah.
So I've got maintain the system we've got. The idea of general fund capital facilities plan, which would include, you know, considerations for future public works, city hall, FAC, maintenance and replacement, anything there. So again, maintain what we've got, but also as needed, look at future facilities as well.
Okay, good job, Mac. That's a genius.
2 for 2.
That gets a genius.
Had to steal some of David's thunder somehow.
Max brought that up before, the need to have that, especially when you think of, you know, for example, City Hall or even Public Works facility. We talk about how impact fees can help pay for a portion of that. Well, we don't collect impact fees for these general fund types of things, right? The new, when we build a new city hall or renovate a city hall and need to expand it for build out needs versus current needs, that's missing impact fees. We're not collecting it. It's not on some document that we can say that's part of the calculation. So Max brought that up before. I think that's great that you recognize that need. Okay. Employees. Number 6, they all go under number 6.
Yes.
We did put everything that was on a sticky note on this document, so you knew that your ideas weren't lost.
You should actually have Blair
Monthly.
do number 3.
I would like monthly behind that, have Blair give a mandatory employee training.
But it should be on,
Second that.
on number 3 to increase employee activities, to increase friendships.
Yep.
That's me.
So let me ask this, are the success measures in the right place? Are they pointing us in the right direction?
I think so.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, part of me was saying that like you put employee satisfaction and cultural and camaraderie can be part of your goals or your initiatives that are, some of these things start to fall under as well. We don't have anything that's broad under initiatives other than maybe,
Mhm.
I mean, some of them are projections like our long-term staffing needs and tough stuff, but I don't know how you broaden that unless someone has suggestions.
Because you can measure low turnover rate. You can measure recruitment efforts.
You can measure employee satisfaction.
That culture and camaraderie, I agree. So that could be somewhat of an established, I can't do wording.
Wordage.
Wordage.
It
You know what I'm
sounded
saying?
like from our last conversation a couple weeks ago, there was a desire to put emphasis on work culture. Is that
Yes.
kind of an initiative to emphasize quality work culture?
Yeah, I mean, that's why I was saying culture and camaraderie would be more of an initiative to me. It could be a measurement too, but it,
So as I hear that, what I think as I try to create that or administer that or be one of the first people that is charged with accomplishing that, I think of, policies and procedures manuals. I think of ways to make our work culture inviting to be here, right? In recruitment idea, but then to stay here, there are things that are kind of employee directed as far as policies and there are things that are more kind of hard lined or hard nosed. Not that it's a play culture. I'm not trying to describe that. It's very much different from that. It's enjoyment of getting the job done, not enjoyment by avoiding getting the job done, if that makes sense. And I think that we've had those conversations as staff before. But as items come up that are maybe policies and procedures that are maybe employee friendly, what I'm hearing is the council saying you have empowered the city manager essentially to try to create a work culture that is inviting and that is desirable. And I think people have different definitions of that type of culture. Some people fit differently with other types of work cultures, and I understand that. But by saying emphasize the work culture, those are some of the ramifications that right where my brain goes. So if that's in line with what you're thinking, then yeah, I think that's the right phrasing. If there's more to it or a different direction that you're feeling, now's probably the time to help me understand.
I agree with that.
I want to hear what Quinn says about this.
Quinn's sleeping.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think, the culture aspect, we just want it to be a place people want to be to work and they enjoy being to work, and however you write that down. But basically, we just want to have that type of culture. I agree with the comment, maybe increase or develop culture and camaraderie would go under an initiative. All the others are very specific details.
Would you say developing a culture of family-driven community with heritage, safety, and charm in its heart as an organization?
That's our overriding thing that applies to all of these, yeah.
Yeah.
So I would tell you that I think culture, we don't want to take that word out. Like at my husband's job, that's a huge focus and everything they do is around their culture. And when things fall outside of that culture, it's noticeable and everyone goes, hey, this is not our way. This is not how we do it. So I think it's important to keep that in there.
One, I think it's important to know with that culture, that's kind of what you're establishing with the vision and the primary mission, right? You're establishing what the culture of the city and the organization and is when we're doing everything that we do. Everything should be centered back to that vision. So yeah.
Okay.
Please.
I was going to move on. So if you still want to talk culture.
Well, I didn't want to talk culture. I just wanted to say that we also have to make sure that, because culture isn't some of the things that we're talking on here, the pay more to attract more, and it doesn't have anything to do with like career pathing or, giving those that are looking for professional development a way to go through that. So I think there is a big, strong element that we have to develop on the culture side, but at the same time, we also have to say, okay, on the human resource side, how are we going to have those that want to stay here do so because they have a career path, because they're, have a professional mindset, not just it's a great place to work.
And that's why I thought employee satisfaction fell into that group, because you're only going to go so far on culture and the good old buddy thing. I mean, I get it.
For a frame of reference, from our last strategic plan, we had identified basically 5 things under employees, and we've already hinted at them, right? So it's not like we're off in a different area. We're really in the same spot, but we talked about hiring quality employees. So we talked recruitment here, hiring quality employees, retaining high-performing employees, preparing and training all employees for future leadership opportunities. Some of that was directed specifically to succession planning within our organization, right? Career path here, but it also opens up the idea of, career path somewhere else if we're really focused on training, right? People get skills and become very marketable. And then we talked about housing employees in facilities that enhance high performance. Kind of flowery words, but the idea of a facility that helps our employees succeed. I think that's both on the facilitating the actual work and the movement and the interaction and the flow, but also kind of the feel, the environment when we talk about culture. And then the last one was maintaining quality policies and procedures. So again, we brought up that idea of how that relates to culture and work and whatnot as an employer and as a work environment. I think we've centered around those things. And if you feel like all of those are encapsulated in this idea of culture and career path and whatnot, then not to copy and paste, but I think we've kind of identified those various initiatives to some degree previously.
Is the pay rate under your policy and procedures? Is that where you would?
No,
or
just
would that be its own
as far as our established
task
market
or-
ranges.
Mhm.
So that's an administrative function, but it's based on the council's allocation of resources.
Okay.
Saying, here's the amount of money for employees. But there was a philosophy made by the council, and I think the council needs to determine that philosophy generally of how you'd like to direct the use of that money, not in the details, but just in the general.
Okay, thank you.
You get it?
Okay, anything else? That's the end of it.
Do you want to, as far as next steps, as I anticipated tonight, we would end up with our list of initiatives. We can recategorize some of these projects. We'll kind of flesh it out as this is what the overall plan looks like. And then we'll get that to the council so you can look at it and evaluate it and make sure that it is the direction that you want to provide to the city. And so that's what we'll bring back to you. Not necessarily as a city council discussion item anymore. I think we've got to the point where it's more of just an administrative document for us, but we'll send that to you so that you can all see it. And if you have questions or comments or tweaks or whatnot, the strategic plan, kind of like the general plan, is a living document, right? The whole idea is that throughout this year and over the next few years, right? It's not just a one time period here. That when things come up that are important, that we feel need to have time and attention, we now can have this list of priorities. We have this direction document that we can then say, where does that fit? Does that fit into our strategic plan? Is that more of a priority than some of the things we have on here? Is that where we want to focus our time and attention? Hopefully it makes those decisions easier for you as a council and for staff as we run into things that's outside the scope of the strategic plan. It may be a brilliant idea, it may be a great idea, but we've made conscious decisions about where our focus is going to be. In this vein of our vision, our mission statement, we now have key areas that we want to put our time and energy into. The committee work, I think, falls into that, as well as staff work, that we now can feel more aligned in our overall goals and direction, so that when those questions come up or those ideas come up, oh, should we do that? Should we tackle that? We can compare it to the work that's already been done and say, you know what? I actually think what's on the list is more important than what this new idea is. Or, wow, we didn't think of it at the time. That definitely is more important. Let's shift priorities.
So just for clarifications, because I do appreciate the thought process and making sure that everything is streamlined, so we're utilizing city resources appropriately. If we do have any new tasks that the residents or members of the council or committee have, where is staff anticipating council bringing those forward? Is that going to be in new business? Is that going to be at the committee level? Or is it just going to be, like, how do we present that? Knowing that it has to fall in line and we've done prioritizations. How does staff envision that?
I see that as a conversation amongst the council. Either you take that directly to the mayor. If you feel like it needs to be a full-fledged agenda item to say, should we tackle this as a new initiative or should we tackle this as a new project? I could see that happening as a standalone agenda item. But as you brought up, kind of the idea of new business or a report saying our committee ran into this while we were working, right? That idea of what's our process for recognizing new code, for example. Oh, our committee ran into this code issue. Is that something? And bringing it up in reports or new business feels like an appropriate time to let the council weigh in and say, yeah, I think that's important or not.
So may I ask the council and the mayor how they feel about that?
I'm good with that.
I think that's appropriate. It needs to, they're gonna come up because we don't know what's gonna be hitting different developments, different committees, different anything. And so there will always be something that changes.
So Mayor, would you like us to contact you before the meeting to let you know what new business we have?
I asked for that once before.
But we like to surprise you. It's kind of fun. It's a little bit funner that way.
Yeah, I think that's fine.
Okay, I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page as far as expectations of how the process is going to work. And
So what would be the advantage of sending it to the mayor first?
I feel just, I mean, a professional courtesy.
Well, but I mean,
Because I'm going to tell Rod what I feel anyways,
Yeah.
and he knows that.
and that's what I mean, it's gonna be brought up in it, and unless it's gonna be changed, or unless we're gonna actually put a line item under that new business on the agenda itself, I mean, I have no problem doing it. I mean, we can send it to the whole council all at once, and the mayor. It's just what is to be gained by it, and that's it's just a question.
I think it's a fair question, but I think that as part of the process, I mean, it may be something, hey, Mayor, this came up, somebody contacted me about this. We don't have time to put on the agenda, but just so you're aware, I'm going to bring this up. It's a lot easier when you're up here to have time to process an idea before it's just thrown at you. You don't have to.
No,
You don't have to.
I'm just trying to understand, because I also know I'm really kind of fuzzy on the whole when we can bring things up and it needs public comment, when we can't, when it has to be publicly noticed, and when. So I'm just trying to understand if there's an advantage to doing that, then absolutely I want to be able to do it, or I think we should. I just don't see any negative to it, so it's an easy one to do. I don't know.
I think one advantage of maybe talking to the mayor beforehand, because we have 24 hours to update an agenda, and Lisa probably doesn't want me to tell you that. We have 24 hours to update an agenda. So if it is something that the mayor feels, oh, we might need a longer conversation to actually talk about this, then we can put it as agenda item, because at the communication items, there's only so many things that you could do. You can inform, and then it's okay, go figure out what to do with it after, right? Or we give a head nod of, yeah, let's work on it this way. Whereas if it's an items like, hey, this is big, I feel like it needs a little bit more. Then the mayor has the opportunity to say, okay, yeah, let's put that, on the agenda, so that we have a dedicated portion to talk about it.
Yeah,
That
thank
may be
you.
an advantage.
Yeah, between you and Angie, I think that makes perfect sense to me. Yeah. I'm just slower than everyone else at this time.
You're good.
I hope everybody feels a little bit of an exhale in this moment after a lot of heavy lifting.
I was just gonna say they wanted a 5-minute break.
What else do we have?
Do we have a lot left?
Just the
Blair has a
committee
lot of
updates.
committee
Got the
priorities
committee
he's written down.
priorities, the ARPA fund, legislative review, and then any comments. So not a lot, if we can just keep going. Up to you
It's up
guys.
to you. You're the boss.
I'm good with going.
I got my water. I'm good.
Okay,
Okay.
going to number 9, committee priorities. So this is a new item that we're implementing here tonight, so hopefully we'll go well. So I think what we'll do is we'll start at the top of the committee assignments and just have the chair give 3 or 4 or 5 priorities that they see in their committees, and then we'll just kind of discuss them, and if we feel good about them, we'll have them work on those and go to the next. So Quinn, you're going to be up first, finance and administration.
Okay, my proposal on the admin finance is to continue to meet every other month. That's what we've been doing. And I could send this out, but there's a lot of different things. Periodically review the policy and procedures regarding the finance and procurement side of things. Recommend action to the council regarding an organizational structure, staffing, governance, staffing levels, city employees, from the admin side of things. Periodically review the employee manual and safety manuals. Recommend to the council anything relative to surplus property on the finance side. Obviously work with the city staff with the budget and audits, and make sure that we are on task there. Periodically review the city's outstanding bonds, bond commitments, other financial commitments we have. Basically along those lines. I mean, if you want a detail of it, there's 5 or 6 I've got under each one.
You have 5 or 6 under each one?
Yeah, 5 under administration and
You don't, that's really
5 under
good.
finance.
Well, you knew Quinn would have a lot of detail.
I know, he's got it.
Good job, Quinn.
Sounds good to me.
Anybody have anything they'd like to add?
I put find ways to give raises to employees under finance and admin.
Okay.
Yeah, that's,
So that's your task, Quinn.
yep, we can add that one, yep.
Okay.
Everyone feel good with that?
Sure.
Joel?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Great, Quinn. Appreciate that. Thanks.
Yep.
Municipal utilities.
Okay,
Angie?
I have a couple. We need to complete the storm drain fee analysis and presentation, which can be done pretty quickly. And part of that includes our capital facilities plan. Trying to think what else we had under that. Streetlight replacement plan, I don't know where we're at on that. Because we've had not much time I'm not caught up on everything municipal utilities. So if I'm missing something, tell
Oh,
me.
streetlights are on my list as well.
Okay. And then the public works building.
Wait, can I just rewind 1 second? When you say streetlight replacement program, like, are you guys hoping
The goal is to speed it up.
speed it up,
Yes.
getting it for our,
Brandon?
So
for the areas that are not.
Well,
being
I
developed?
do want to,
can I
do you
do
want a
it
quick
succinctly?
overview of the program?
Yeah.
So we know
No,
what it is.
Oh, sorry, yes.
Right now, our budget each year is $50,000 towards streetlight replacement. The Municipal Utilities Committee evaluated whether we should own our own streetlights or we should continue to rent from Rocky Mountain Power. The decision was made to own our own streetlights. So we need to go through a process of replacing Rocky Mountain Power owned lights with our own. And so we put $50,000 a year as the program. And the question is, should we do that faster? That, I don't remember the exact number, but that was about a
25 years.
20, 25-year timeline to
And I don't
replace
think any
all
of
of
us
the.
realized that
Rocky
how
Mountain
long
Power.
that was going to take until after we just did the first. And that's a long ways out.
So you're wanting to increase the amount set aside each month? Okay, or
Year.
year, sorry. Okay.
Or find other sources. Because that's more of a one, if you're using one-time funds, that's a pretty easy one-time fund type thing. That was actually something previous council member was trying to figure out how to find one-time funds.
Okay, thank you.
Public works building, so determining the design, working with the architect, and that's just a huge one we need to work on. Anything else that you have, Blair, for?
Nope, you already hit CPAs, streetlights and public works. So-
CPAs?
Or
Okay.
sorry.
All right, CPAs.
I
I do hit
I was thinking
CPAs all the time.
CFPs, but
I've been thinking CPAs all day, sorry.
CPAs are at.
Yeah, it's that time of year.
Yeah, it's that time.
Anyone have anything to add to that, or does that sound good? Sounds good to me. Haley? You
That
good?
sounds great.
Okay. Joel, tell us how you're going to beautify the city.
Oh, boy.
He's gonna buy a new dress and
Yeah, I don't think that'd beautify it. Yeah, this is kind of tough because this is taking over after Angie, and she is definitely a hard act to follow on this. And looking at how low of a budget we have, some of the things I want to be able to do is finalize everything that's going on at the Canyon Meadows Park right now. And that, of course, is we've got the new bike mounds that are being developed, and we have to finish the application on the pickleball courts. We got a few things down there, and got some things that I want to work with the train club as we move forward. But I think as we look at parks as a whole, one of the things I want to be able to do is first do a study of, now that our flagship park, if you will, is done or nearing completion, dividing now the rest of that attention towards the rest of the city parks and what needs to be improved or not with. First thing I want to do is do a demographic study, which is not too difficult, that actually shows the age groups and families that are around each one of these parks and the uses that they would do. Then we can look at, like Angie had suggested or had in motion earlier, was doing some type of survey of what people see as the actual usage for some of these parks. But I think we need to have an overall plan that we can say, okay, here's what each one of these parks is going to look like going forward, and how it will affect the neighborhood that it surrounds. And then from that, then we can start putting together a plan of what kind of equipment, long-term, each year, whether we have a couple of items or 3 items, or how we're going to now spend that to make that vision of these different parks usable for those that actually are surrounding it. Another big thing that I'm looking at doing is how we can also make our parks and or recreation programs more profitable. And I say that knowing that we don't make much of a profit. I've seen what a lot of the other cities are doing right now with, say, like pickleball tournaments. And they're charging $400 for a tournament per team. And we're nowhere close to that. So I think it's going to take some investigation to understand that. Also, different contracts and things that we have on the Family Activity Center. So I think while this year I don't have as much to be able to spend, and we don't have as many projects already defined, a lot of the initiatives really need to go into how can we make what we have better for our citizens, and at the same time, maybe support some of its own costs. The Family Activity Center is actually one where it'd be interesting to know how much it's used versus the population, and find out why, what we need to improve inside there or not, whether it's something we can do. Maybe it's cost, maybe it's not. But I think that those kind of information gatherings are big. And then look into heavily grant sponsorships, those kind of things that we can use. I know they're out there for different programs, and it's, like I said, this is just a big learning curve for me on a lot of the parks. Obviously maintain what we've got, but going forward. And then I don't know how it would start this year, but I've already talked to a number of people on what we can do donation wise to take the Veterans Memorial Park down at the bottom of 1900 and improve the veterans element of it, honoring our veterans and whatnot. We've got a huge display up at the front, very beautiful. The rest of that park, I think we could continue to advance that. And there's a lot of places that we can get donations for. We just saw 2 months ago, Bountiful, I think it was Bountiful, through their citizens banding together and getting enough donations, they were able to improve their Veterans Memorial Park and actually put a very large um, memorial, if you will, to those from the city who have actually died in the service. So it's a big one that I want to do, and I know that's a huge one to tackle. It takes a lot of planning. So this year I've got a lot of planning and understanding that I think the city really needs to go forward and make these parks what we want to do, which I have down on mine includes a lot of the heart of South Weber and what we can do down at the Central Park to be able to kind of build some of that relationship already before we do anything else. So that's what I've got on mine, and I am more than welcome to any type of suggestion, seeing that this was my first one.
Okay, I think probably the one that is staring us in the face is the completion of the pickleball court down there. And with what we're finding out on the shortage of water and how we're going to be cut back on that, what are we going to do?
Well, from my
We're gonna
understanding,
Talk about that next week.
Yeah.
From where I'm looking at, I haven't investigated at all, so I will throw that down on there and really get an understanding.
And
of
I
it.
don't care to talk about tonight.
Yeah.
I just think that's our number one goal, is to figure that out.
To how we're going to handle water supply throughout the parks and keeping everything green.
Please.
Okay.
Anyone have anything they would like to add to?
Can I maybe ask a clarifying question? A lot of what you described there in my mind fits under a broader concept of kind of a parks master plan. I know we have a Canyon Meadows Park master plan that we've been working toward over 20 years, but it sounds like you're describing more of one that's broad about what's the master plan for all of the parks and looking at it across as one park system within the city. Am I
Exactly, yeah.
understanding that correctly?
Yeah, because we have had a lot of attention down there, and a lot of that has been the impact fees and whatnot. And we've got a beautiful park because of it. Now, there's a lot of other areas that could be improved just as well, and the people around it be able to use it. So it would be a large design. The idea that I actually got it from was from St. George, and how they have each park is a completely different kind of park that meets the neighborhood around it. Some of them are for the younger crowd, so they have a lot of the climbing toys and the big toys that kids would play with. Others are more trying to get the teenagers in there, so you've actually got the rock climbing stuff and all of these different things that would be interested to see what we could get more support, because if we have a large future plan, then it's easier to meet.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Joel.
I'm sorry, Mayor, I have 8 things on that.
Okay. Cool. Do you?
Most of, yeah, I do. I do. Most of them are the
Hold on.
same.
That was yours.
Yeah.
That was
Yeah.
your baby last year.
So, we've touched on most of it. Landscaping, Canyon Meadows Park, continue working with residents on the bike track, monitor potential grants for projects that meet our priority goals. So maintaining our park priorities projects, which is a document that we have. The train club agreement and verifying if the train club fits our city. Citizen input on amenities, feedback not so much a survey, but feedback on why they like that. And we had a discussion with that. Plans to delegate our wrap tax as that comes in. And I had on one of the sheets for our strategic planning was a new amenity every 2 years, which I think is attainable with a wrap tax, but we just have to have that planned. So.
No, I think those are great, and they actually fall in with what I've got. The wrap tack is another one that completely missed, so that's very good. Thank you.
That's all. Thanks, Mayor.
Well, the only other one I had was we need to address the restroom need or issue at Veterans Park
Yeah.
Yeah.
And others.
and other parks, yeah.
That's a big one. Okay.
Good. Thank you, Quinn.
Public safety, Blair.
All right, I'll be quick. I have both the long-term and the short-term solution and contract with the Davis County Sheriffs. I have budgeting for our future long-term needs for fire and police. Then some less broad items are traffic at Highmark and city sign, which would check off a couple of my boxes. And that's about it. Did we want to talk about, I mean, are we talking about how often we're supposed to meet? I know Quinn mentioned that. Are we supposed to?
Well,
Because it changes. Like, the reason I say that is like public safety, I think, needs to meet more often
then,
now while we're doing that. But then it doesn't need to meet as often, you know, quarterly's fine. But,
Kind of
So that's-
project based.
yeah. hmm
That makes sense.
anyone have anything to add to that? I think that's good.
Yeah, I think I was gonna ask the same question because PR is a little bit the same way, where there's a lot we can knock out and maybe we'll slow down for maybe just up to the chair, depending on how they run
Yeah.
the overall
Okay.
committee.
Yeah.
Okay. Did you have traffic at Highmark? Is that what you
Yes.
said?
Mhm.
Okay,
That was yours.
yeah, okay, thank you.
Anything else? Public affairs, Haley?
Okay, I have kind of some bigger things that got brought up because a lot of my ideas went up on that board. So under kind of community outreach, the email options on our email list, you know, that's sent out. I think there's a option that we can create for people who want to hear all the news and for people who only just want to hear like emergency things or, you know, things of that nature. I'd like to create a website content evaluation so we know if it should go on the website, just kind of some parameters that it meets. So we're not bogging down the website with, oh, put it on the website, put it on the website, but we're also not just letting the website go stale. So some ideas with that is new website pages. One specifically I've been thinking of is Dust. We do have a Dust webpage. It's kind of tricky to find, but it doesn't really have a lot of information. I think we're gaining a lot of information right now that we can add to that would really, really help our residents because there's just a lot of questions out there. And then recaps, talking about recaps and how often, where they're going to go to. We discussed a flag committee. Currently, the flags that go up on holidays are done by basically one resident. The flags are city owned, but they're stored at the resident's home. And that one person is in charge of all the flags. So if he's not there, then they don't go up. So we had been talking about some sort of flag committee to maybe have more people be willing to help out as part of that community outreach.
Yeah, we also discussed having it that people could check the flags out the weekend before. So they were stayed, you know, the flags were stored at the facility. Someone checks it out before the 4th of July weekend, and it's their responsibility to bring them back and collect
Bring it
them.
back on the following Monday that we open. I'm a little nervous about that one, considering Country Fair Days is still in desperate need of some community help. So that one's a little nervousing. We're doing really cool wordage tonight. And then two kind of bigger projects. One is water conservation, and this would kind of piggyback with other committees, one being code and one being municipal, but trying to help our community conserve water. Right now, our public works, when they read the meter, and I know Wayne had kind of talked with them about this before we left, but when they read the meter, there's a 2 to 3 day lapse. And depending on when they read that meter, you may be an extra 20,000 gallons or whatever if it would happen to be 2 days after. So it's kind of hard for residents. I mean, one month they could be using 4,000 gallons and the next month 7. But that's just because they went 2 gallons over and we prorate up. So there's some ideas that Wayne had that were mentioned in that committee. I'm not sure if you can relay those back or whatnot, if you remember.
Oh, I remember the
Okay,
conversation.
perfect.
Yeah, staff
Okay.
looked into that and,
Okay,
you know, there's information there.
okay. So it
I
would be.
don't know if there's as big a problem as there's a perception there, but we're
Okay.
happy to talk through it.
Okay. Anyway, being able to allow people just to know how much water they're using and then know ways that they can conserve. And I don't know, maybe even like a competition or you know, if you drop so much on your monthly bill, you can come in and get a treat and be on social media. Like make it for the kids to kind of help out, make it kind of a family thing. And then Angie brought up another great idea. I put April in art. That's not the right way to say it. Art in April. Is that how you said it?
Yeah, and I
Okay.
totally stole it from another city.
You want to go ahead and introduce it?
Yeah, so basically a way to showcase talent for our residents, that they come in and they display their art of any medium that they want. And then, so we would open up chambers, or however we want to do it, for that, and just get people excited. We can spotlight it on our social media platforms. And then if we want, we can designate winners. I suggested we have the YCC could hand out prizes for each category. But just kind of a fun thing to do, because we do have a lot of talent here, so it'd be kind of fun. Give us something to do before it gets hot.
Yeah.
That's an Easter egg program.
Yeah, I know, because we're not doing the Easter egg hunt, right? We are.
We are doing it.
I was gonna say, what? I thought that was happening in April.
We're just adding more to our plate, because why not? So, I think that covers.
The only other thing, well, I have two more things. Well, self-subscription service. Did you say that?
Sorry, what?
Adding people that can text cell phone.
Oh, messaging.
Yeah, thank you.
Mhm.
Something like Find the Sasquatch promotion we talked about, either around town, like the pop-up shops or whatnot. TV and the FAC, which goes PRN parks, because you can do all sorts of things on there. And then special causes to support, which was kind of brought up in PR, but also kind of policy. For example, like Governor Cox just flew the Ukrainian flag over the Capitol, which is a fine thing to do, but it opens the door for flying any flag. And we would like to have a policy for the city to state what is appropriate to fly.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for bringing those.
Are you writing these down, Dave?
Yes.
Oh, look at you.
Okay. Are we doing all of these?
Let's,
6 months.
Katie, why don't you?
I am writing all of them down.
Okay. Lisa, do you mind pulling up that picture? Is that okay? So code committee, every other committee was fairly easy. Code committee was a little bit more difficult. And it is something that I do really want to get some council input on. Because when we look at what's in our code, we look at a whole bunch of things that really need to be addressed like right now. And so it's really hard to sit down and be like, okay, that one, because as soon as you say that one, like 5 others go to the top. And so it's been kind of hard. So Joel actually helped me create this, and we talked for quite a while today trying to figure out what we thought would be things that need to be done. Everything kind of feels urgent right now, but this kind of put it in a little bit more context of these are the ones that we feel are really important, that we want to address first. So that would be that first kind of teal colored square. So
Do you mind zooming in a little bit? Thank you.
condominium regulations, landscaping for commercial water rights update, that would be the landscaping portion of what we talked about with the exceptional standards that we didn't quite finish. We're going to come back to. Traffic study and standards and requirement, dust mitigation, monitoring and penalties. That kind of leads into what Joel brought up earlier, that if we put these in place and then we renew with the contract, we weren't sure if that would be the case or not. So if we do put dust code in place and we renew the contract, do they now go to our code, or are they always just grandfathered in because they've been here before us?
I think we're gonna want Jamie's
Jamie on that?
specific
Okay.
opinion on that.
That's what we thought too. Business licensing regulations was something that's been on our list for quite a while, just because when we got our short-term rentals, we realized there's some holes in our business licensing regulations and we want to get that updated. Flex office space, that's something that has come up as a possible desire from some developers, but we don't have any code on it or anything. So noise is currently coming March or April. I'm sorry, April. Oh, I have it right here. April County Commission is when the noise will be coming through. So can spend some time kind of giving some feedback to that. And then again, emergency culinary water restrictions. This again is Joel, just kind of if we have like a green, yellow, red day, what citizens need to do on a red day or what they need to do on a yellow day, just to kind of help us through these difficult times. And then arbor protection, which also from Joel, the tree man, he just if we have a development that has large mature trees that need to be taken down, if they're diseased or whatnot, they need to replace that tree with a full-grown tree. Some code that would require that, or require protection of trees that are full mature and healthy. But you also have those other not urgent and those other ones too that are urgent, so it's really difficult. So I don't know, maybe take a second to kind of look it over and see if you guys think there are things that we need to bump off of it and other things that we need to maybe bump to it.
I will just, as a thought upon that, is that each code typically takes minimum of 3 months to get complete. So throw that out there.
Well, and that's actually something that we were trying to take into account here. When we have things that are time sensitive, I mean, those are the things we're going to handle first. And that's why they're, even if they're maybe not as important as we would think on some of the other levels, yeah, time sensitive items have to be done. And knowing that there is a 3-month leeway, which I think we can probably condense down as we, go through and smooth it out. Not by much, I know because we have the meetings and have to schedule it all. But if we have that in the process, then we can know and set expectations for the rest of the council and for the public. Okay, it's going to take us 3 to 4 months to get this through and then have it out there live. So that's why we tried to add in time sensitive items. But yeah, it's that the important and urgent usually are the much larger, and when you start getting down into the lower ones, you can see we don't even have to give them much room, because if we get down to them, we're doing good.
I will say it's a 3 to 4 month minimum.
I heard 3 months. Got it.
Because we've got to write it and then flush it out. So I don't disagree that a lot of those are.
And a lot of these is learning from others. I mean, Jamie's been a great asset, Trevor's been a great asset, but a lot of it's, just learning from other cities, what they have been able to do, and copy and pasting a lot of it as well, and then tweaking it to our uniqueness. Is that a word? Okay, good.
They're all words.
Good point. That's a good point.
It's just which ones make Scrabble or not. I was just gonna ask.
That's good.
Okay, this is good. Any comments? Does anybody have anything they want to add, or want to point out a couple that we feel are most urgent to start with, or just work on the urgent, important ones together?
I think the business license and short-term rental needs to be taken care of quickly. And I don't know what the situation or expectation is with one that's coming up, but it seems like if there's abuse prior to getting a license, they shouldn't be able to get a license.
Yeah.
And we can prioritize within each one of these sections. So if the council feels that one needs to be moved up to the top, that's easy to do, and everything else just keeps on moving down. So
Did you list those in order of the recommended priority?
nope, I literally went through the
This is like,
program. So
this is like, we could get to this. We could say, okay, these are things that we feel like are
or have already been put on the plate. So yeah.
I'll say it this way. I don't think I will be able to finish all this on this list by the end of my term. No, I mean, there's no way, no how. But maybe I can finish like 3 or 4, like it's a lot of work, but it's all really important items.
I do think we then ought to prioritize those though. I mean, I'm not saying we have to do it tonight.
Yeah.
That probably needs the business license, I think. I mean, we've talked about, there's been issues coming up with the condominium aspect that we just faced that we never even thought about before.
Yeah.
So there are some things that can be prioritized. So
Another question, and maybe for Jamie, condominium regulations, if that were to go into code, and the person who's going to be owning the condominiums doesn't own them yet, do they have to apply to that code? Or is it the code at the time
It
that they built
depends on
it?
what are we restricting the owner or the there's the owner of the development and then the
Uh-huh.
owner of the airspace inside. So which one are we trying to restrict?
The owner of the development. Well,
Yeah,
I mean, it
tough.
kind of,
So, for example, say like the hillside and having some type of protection for the trees or the bushes, or basically so that it doesn't erode away. Right now, we don't have anything in code to stop that. If, we get a quick little wildfire, who has to replace all of that? How is that maintained? Does that right now, since we don't have that code, if you're living next to one of those hills, you're covered. You don't have to do anything. If we make that code, does the current landowner, is that the only one that has to deal with it? Or if they sell it, or they create an HOA, or they do any of these other kind of things, where is that line that now this new code applies to that landowner? And that's something I don't know.
So if Jamie were here, he would start his answer with, it depends.
Yeah.
Because each scenario would be different, but generally speaking, when you put new code in place, it applies moving forward. There are circumstances where you put code in place and it applies to the people that are already there. But again, it depends on the specifics of the scenario.
If we're talking about events that haven't happened yet and we're planning for, then that would be a proactive code. Very rarely do we retroactively institute code. And so, but in the case of a development, if they're developing a condominium complex, they'd be subject to the ordinances that were in place when they made application. They're entitled to those.
Application of the development, or now that it's a business, because it's an HOA, that's not really part of the development process, but the HOA now is a separate legal entity. So
We would have to ask Jamie on when their entitlement ends on the construction, when it begins on the ownership phase. I don't know that.
yeah.
Okay.
Angie had just a
What-
little, go ahead, Dave.
Sorry, I know we were talking kind of the priority idea, just again, a process clarification. Is the expectation that the code committee will basically recommend a priority and bring that to the council, and the council says, yeah, that's the priority, or?
I think so.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
It's gonna be a big task.
mhm.
I mean, some you're creating all over.
Yeah, we have several ordinances that a noise ordinance we have to write and a couple others. So,
Well, and to your point, the idea of taking code from another city, that sounds really easy, right? Control C, Control V, we're good, but
Sometimes gets you in trouble.
it is actually much more difficult than that,
Mhm.
because our needs sometimes are very different. And even if it's a great model ordinance, we've found as we've dug into that as code committee, that it doesn't actually apply the way that we would like it to. And so it's a great starting point, but it doesn't always get us to the end as quickly as we would like, so.
yeah.
Because ultimately, that is the power of the legislative body, right? Is to establish those codes and think through the ramifications. And so, we've done a really good job, or at least I would commend you for the job you've done to this point of thinking through the consequences of code decisions. And I know they're not easy, and they weigh on you a lot. And some of that is why the process takes as long as it does, to just think through it before it ever becomes a public document that goes through public noticing. And I know that, at least from my perspective, I've watched you handle that with aplomb. It's been really good and very difficult. So well done.
Okay, I think we'll wrap this up with Angie. She wants to just make a comment on youth council.
Oh, just really quick. Sorry, really quickly. Goals for this year, we want to do our Easter egg hunt, help with Country Fair Days, do our trick or treating in the park with the city, and invite the sheriff's department again, and fire department like we did last time, or breakfast with Santa. Service project, we're doing a service project at the animal shelter in a couple weeks, and continue our leadership trainings. So is there anything else anyone would like the YCC to do?
I think that's plenty.
I think that's.
Perfect,
that
thank
sounds
you.
Good to me. Good job.
You have enough to do.
Thank you. Thank you, all of you, for all the hard work that you put into your committees. I know it's over and above, and city has really benefited from all of your hard work, and I appreciate that. Moving along, discussion items. This next discussion item, the only thing that we're really wanting to discuss tonight on 10 on the ARPA funds are, we've already allocated, or we've chosen areas that we would like that money to go for. And that at the time we did that, it was because we were kind of limited on those funds as to where we could spend them. Now they've opened that up to where we can use them in more areas. So do we want to look at that, to use them in other areas, or are we good with the 3 areas that we've already decided to use that money on? If we want to look at other areas, then we'll define that and bring that up into the night.
What are our 3 areas?
We selected cybersecurity and then water and
Water
sewer
and sewer.
projects.
And what was the amount of ARPA funds?
900?
Yeah, just over 900,000. It's 920 something.
And how much
But
of
we
it,
get it over 2 years. Yes.
how much of it was for the water and sewer updates? Remember?
Almost 900,000 of it. Yeah, the cybersecurity portion was the smallest amount. Is that right? 35 to 45, something like that, in that range. Should have looked that up before the meeting. I'm sorry.
So the only thing that I would think of, and that's because it was just brought to my attention, is the parks and keeping things green. I know part of the issue that we have is the big rainbirds and how much water has to come out for that. I don't know if there's anything that can be done yet, but I'd like at least us to think about what can, and I'll meet with Mark and anybody else who can kind of get us some ideas. How do we keep it green? And is there irrigation systems that can do that more efficiently? I don't know. But I think that's one that we're going to be running into. What are your thoughts?
As someone who loves parks, I don't know if that's the best use of our money. Especially since I don't know how much watering we really will be able to do this year.
It's gonna keep snowing, Angie. Keep praying.
I'm praying.
My thoughts on it, we spent time identifying the original 3. And so I think if a committee thinks that there's another place that we should, consider spending the money, then they ought to bring it before the council, give the reasons why. And if it sounds good, then we adjust it. Otherwise, I would say go with what we already decided. But give every committee and staff, the opportunity to bring forward a proposal if they think there's another spot that would be better to utilize that money.
Quinn hit on part of mine. Does staff have a I mean, that was my main question when I saw that. Does staff have recommendations for that? And I have a recommendation for some of that because you heard it earlier. I think if we could do some of the streetlights, the city is saving money in the long run by spending that money. And it's one-time money we don't have. And they were talked about even when we first got the ARPA funds. But we determined they couldn't be used for that. And so, I mean, it sounds selfish coming from a streetlight, but they're not going down my street. I mean, they're going everywhere else in the city. And so that was one of my thoughts.
So the question of staff has a whole list of projects that we wish we could fund that we aren't able to fund. And the council's run into that in every committee. And when ARPA came out, we knew that much of that was taken off of the table. And I think Brandon said it at one point and others have said it, that when we did make those ARPA decisions initially, that there was a desire to put it into projects, put it into infrastructure in the city, which I think can still happen. But now we have a whole much broader scope of where that money could be used. So staff has a long list, but we didn't want to spend any time prioritizing it if the council didn't want to open up that discussion. So that's why it's more of a yes or no question tonight. If you want to reevaluate, then we're happy to put all that time and energy into basically giving the comparison similar to what we did before, Where, as Quinn pointed out, then the council can say, yeah, this is where we want to put money. This one-time money, it's not going to be here every year. It's just, are there things that we've wanted to do or accelerate that we weren't able to do before? And previously it was limited to water and sewer and a couple other things that didn't make the list. And now all of those general fund items that came up, right? Parks projects, the fire auxiliary building, street lights, all of these things that weren't on the list are now on the list.
I think that that's important, but in discussions that I had with Dave is that it is the general fund things that we could utilize it for now instead of just enterprise, which I think is important. So I would like to review it, just revisit it, just to make sure.
Agreed.
Agreed.
Brandon, you have something to say?
Well, I was just gonna add that the projects that were already identified have a funding source, where some of these desired, projects don't really have a funding source. And so that's, in my mind, that's probably a good place for one-time money.
I agree. I think we ought to review it.
There we go. Dave, you want to do the legislative review?
I want to turn it over to Haley because she's so good at these.
I've dropped the ball. I'm sorry. I know a little bit about that HBA too, but otherwise, and SB 34, which is not called that, but go for it.
I honestly don't have a whole lot to add necessarily. I know that the Utah League of Cities and Towns always puts together a recap of what took place in the session and helps us understand if there are changes to city code that need to happen. Jamie and I sat down last year after the session and talked about, are there policies and procedures that need to be updated, or are there city code sections that need to be updated based on what happens in the state legislative session? Again, the league helps us out with that and gives us some information. They do a good job of that. Of course, it doesn't come out the week after the legislative session. That will be, forthcoming, but I think that's probably where our time and attention is spent at this point. Is just making sure when that comes out, we review it and see if there are things we need to react to on our side. But there aren't any that just really jump out at me this year like previous years that, oh man, that was just such a hot item or a big item that we really, really went after. So in that way, it felt like a less intense legislative session. But I know that there are items that had lots of conversation throughout the whole session. And but I can't tell you today which ones passed, which ones didn't pass. The end of the session with all of that flurry, I wasn't able to stay on top of as quickly as I wanted to.
I know Senator Waldrop presented his housing affordability like last 6 days of the session, and it passed the next day. So it was kind of frustrating. But I think a good idea is maybe to review that recap once it comes out, and we can know exactly how, because yeah, that last 8 days just is a whirlwind. It's hard to keep up on anything. So I think that's a good plan.
Okay, thank you. New business items. Anyone have any new business items?
It's not a new business item, but I just want to say, working with the mosquito abatement, that has been a very interesting learning process, and what they do for the cities is really quite incredible. And it's been neat to see how they organize this, what they have to do, and the actual dangers that they are preventing. Yeah, it's been really.
You have to come with a new bug or chemical word every time you meet with them. You realize that, right? And you have to know how to pronounce it.
What was that?
Tarsalis and Darsalis.
Yeah.
See, we're all educated now.
Those are good.
And those are real words.
They're all words, Andy. That's not a Scrabble word either. Oh gosh, just never mind. It's officially 4 minutes past 9.
Okay, council items then. I'll start with a couple. And this is almost a month old, but I never brought it up because we never had time before. But back on the last planning commission, why Jeremy Davis was voted in as the chair and Julie Losey as the vice chair. So if you don't know that, now you do. Up at the Wasatch Integrated Waste Facility, a couple of things that they're doing up there. Number one is they're going to start charging for mattresses again. So if anyone comes in with mattresses, it's a $10 per piece. So mattress, box springs, that's 2. They're going to try that at $10. If that doesn't pan out, then they're going to raise it to $15. But right now, that's what they were charging before. The reason that they're charging again is they've been burying them up there, and it's a real problem for them. They just have a real hard time getting them under the dirt, I guess. Where they did recycle them before. How many mattresses do you think come in up there in a day? One day? 85. At least
Wow.
85 to 100 mattresses a day come in up there.
Wow.
So try and bury that many mattresses.
Do we know when that's gonna start taking effect?
I think right away. I think right away. They've got a recycling company that's just down the road from the landfill that says they'll take the mattresses. And so I think that if they don't take them there, then there's the place in Salt Lake. But with this one being so close, but it's new, and so they're not quite sure if they can handle that many, but they're going to try that. If it doesn't work, then they're going to raise it to 15. And then one other item that's going on up there, they're going to start mining Bitcoin.
What?
Yeah. So
What?
they're going to mine Bitcoin. And when they told us that, all of the mayors, what? How do you mine Bitcoin?
They're running a computer software
That's
mining
what it is.
Bitcoin.
That's what mining Bitcoin is running computer software. And what,
Understand.
they've got a company that's going to come in. If you know where the big stack is that they burned the excess methane gas off, they're going to put it right there. They've leased out a piece of property that's, I think, of like 200 feet by 300 feet, that they're going to build a facility. They're going to put a generator in there, and the generator will run off from the methane gas, the excess gas. So that'll get the electricity, then it will run all of these computers to mine Bitcoin. So interesting.
Did they have, I'm curious, why is Wasatch Integrated Waste mining Bitcoin? I mean, that's a
Well,
job.
they're
That's-
not. They've got a company that's
Oh, is taking the
taking
space.
space
Okay.
and utilizing the gas.
They're leasing the space
Right.
from them and,
Exactly.
okay.
With mining
government-
energy
Okay.
is necessary for their data mining. I know cities that have a lot of energy tax go to data mining like that. So we just
So
need
interesting, huh?
Bitcoin come mine here too. We can use energy tax.
Okay, that's all I've got. Anyone else?
Bring your business hands.
That kind of went over my head a little bit. We can't bury mattresses, but we can mine Bitcoin.
Pretty cool, huh?
If you'd like to know how to set it up, I bet we could make a motion to figure it out. We can put it in the parking lot.
Okay.
I could help with
Some
that.
revenue.
Government thinking like a business. Find some revenue sources.
I have no reports, Mayor.
Joel, have you, anything?
No, sir.
Haley?
No.
Blair?
Quickly, the short-term
Oh,
rental code
oh, yeah.
ad hoc committee is reconvening and meeting tomorrow like evening or afternoon. So Haley gave me some ideas. If anybody else has anything they want to bring up, Joel, and give them to myself or Andrew, the mayor.
So that's 4 o'clock tomorrow.
Yes. Mhm.
Okay.
So lessons learned meeting.
Staff?
I do not have anything.
That being said, when we'll ask for a are you joking?
I had one thing.
Trevor?
One tiny, I haven't said hardly anything this whole night.
You told me you had one item, so.
I sent an invite to Eddie right before the meeting. It isn't spam. I just need your help to go in and update that. So
What is it?
it's our HR software that's going to be doing our payroll. And
Oh.
so we need your information to complete payroll.
Ah,
Yeah.
Okay. That's
So
kinda-
it's important.
You don't get paid.
It's important.
Okay,
That's all.
thank you, Trevor. Brandon, have you got an item?
No, I was just ready to say, no, I don't have anything.
We look for a motion to adjourn then.
So moved.
Ahmed,
All in favor, say aye.
Wait,
Aye.
I'll second it.
I think
Oh,
I
Haley
moved
beat you
it,
to
but
it.
Second.
Blair,
Okay.
okay.
okay. I
I.
Aye.